Good morning and welcome to Tampa City Council meeting today, October 6th, 2020.
2022.
Excuse me, 2022.
We don't talk about 2020.
I know. I was trying to get it out of my mind. Who has the invocation today? Is that Councilman Goods? Councilman Goods has invocation?
Yes, for sure. One second.
Councilman Goods, you have invocation?
Absolutely, sir. Wonderful. I have the distinct pleasure this morning of introducing what we call Mother in the Church of Koji, Mother Maureen K. Hayes. Ms. C.T. Heber, come to the podium for us, please. Mother Hayes is a member of Brown Memorial Church of God in Christ. She is presently serving as a Sunday school superintendent, member of the Mothers Board, an evangelist, missionary, and previously served as the president of the Home and Foreign Mission. She has been appointed the district missionary of the Greater Suncoast District, previously served as a Pinellas District Sunday School Field Representative, Greater Love District Sunday School Field Representative, the Greater Suncoast District Sunday School Field Representative, and was also appointed the jurisdiction Southwestern Florida Sunday School Field Representative. That's a big position. Mother Maureen is married to Eddie Hayes and are the proud parents of 3 children, and I know her son, Bernard, works for the city of Tampa. I give you this morning Mother Hayes.
Praise God. Thank you so much.
If everyone could please rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, we love you, we praise you, we thank you right now, God. We thank you for the opportunity to stand here and give you glory. We thank you for every councilman and woman in the building. We thank you for the agenda at hand, that you're going to get the glory. Oh God, we thank you right now how you've kept bodies. We came through a hurricane and we're still standing. We're praying for the bereaved family of the officer, God. And God, we say thank you right now that everything that needs to be taken care of today, God, we ask that you have it done. We give you all the glory, all the praise and the honor in your precious son Jesus' name. Thank God and amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Carlson.
Here.
Vieira. Here. Maniscalco. Here. Hurtak. Here. Goods. Here. Miranda. Here. And Citro.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shelby.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of City Council. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Today's meeting, October 6th of 2022, is being held here at Tampa City Council, live with a full council present. Members of the public can attend in person here in City Council chambers at 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, or virtually participate in this meeting using what is referred to by Florida statutes and rules as communications media technology. Now, to speak remotely during public comment with the use of CMT, the public should know that CMT requires pre-registration, and that is available through the city's website at www.tampa.gov/public comment. The instructions for that are available on the City Council's webpage and also in the agenda and the notice of today's meeting. A reminder, Council, that the public needs to use equipment that has video and audio for the purposes of quasi-judicial hearings, and again, that is also available on the instructions. I ask that City Council waive its rules to allow the continued use of CMT at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Let's go through the approval of the agenda. I know of one item, number 4, I'm going to ask to be continued until October 20th.
Move to continue item 4 October 20th.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira.
And Mr. Chairman, just so you know that right now it is set as a presentation, but my understanding is that council will probably be asked to take action on a resolution at that time. So just so council is aware, you'd have to allow public comment for that before you take action.
And I will be sending out a memo to inform all the council members.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby. Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Goes to agenda item number 4. We're going to have a report by, I believe, Chief of Staff for, we'll make that agenda item number 6. It is going to be a report from our hurricane that just went by us, Hurricane Ian. Okay, staff report, 7. Yes, 8.
Staff reports on 7.
Yes, thank you. We're going quickly here. Ms. Wells will be presenting on 9.
And then I'm requesting that the public be allowed to comment on item 9 after the staff report.
Second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 10. And I believe that that is only going to be just for informational. Nope?
It's going to be continued.
Yeah.
Okay. Continued until December 1st.
That's correct.
Okay, well, agenda item number 10 will be continued until December 1st.
So moved.
And for the purposes of the record, if you could just have it just as the next monthly update schedule, rather than have a continuation, would that be acceptable? Just to remove it from the agenda and have the next regularly scheduled one for December 1st?
Okay,
So moved.
motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 11.
I don't need, I mean, I'll probably make some remarks, but I don't need anybody here for that.
Yeah, I'd like to leave it open for discussion, but I don't need staff. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Hurtak, you want to say something? Okay. Agenda item number 12. I believe 12, 13, and 15, but let's go in order. 12 will be moved to October 20th.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Carlson. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Agenda item number 13 also will be moved until, continued until October 20th.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco. Seconded by Councilman Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item number 14.
Move to continue to November 3rd.
Second. Motion to continue to November 3rd by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Agenda item number 15 to be moved into October 20th.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item number 16.
I don't need anybody here for that. I was briefed by phone, so.
17.
Is that okay? No staff for number
No
16?
staff on that one.
Thank you, sir.
That's fine.
Okay. 17. Councilwoman Hurtak.
No, I don't need staff for that.
And agenda item number 18.
Yes.
Okay, we'll keep that there. All right. And our addendum to our final agenda items, 51.
That's this 51.
Yep, motion that
Wait.
51 be pulled for discussion, so CFO can speak.
Second.
A motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've already talked about 12, 13, and 15. Number 11.
Yes, sir, I don't, for number 11 with McDonald, Clifford McDonald, I don't need anybody here for that.
Okay, we're good on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
27. Certain changes, we've got A correction to the title listed? Okay. 48 is with 49. Okay, we got those two done. And 68. Title of that resolution is on the agenda below. There's just a change in that resolution.
Pardon?
That's 88.
88?
Yes, ma'am.
And 27, I'm sorry, and 27 is a substitution?
Yes,
Is that correct? 27 is,
the correction.
okay. Oh, to the title on the agenda. Thank you.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but as I understand it, the deadline for putting things on the agenda is, I think, Friday the week before. And last night at 10 o'clock, we still had items like number 51 that did not have backup. I had requested some backup for it. It still was not sent to us. It was not put online. And for a $7+ million item, I'm not discussing it right now, but I think we need backup for these things. And there were a couple others as well that we need backup for. And there was one item yesterday that we had received the backup, but it was, I think it was item number 11. We received the backup, but it was not on SIRE yet. But my point is that, just a general administrative thing, out of respect for the public in particular, we need to have, I think we need to set a hard rule that if the backup and the documents are not by a certain time, that it has to be continued. We shouldn't have documents added Thursday morning.
Mr. Rahero.
Thank you, Council. Dennis Rahero, Chief Financial Officer. I can speak specifically to item 51. It was my intention to present those items as part of the presentation, which is why we pulled it from consent. The backup request was made following the item and during the weekly briefings for City Council. On the other items, again, I would just remind Council this agenda is taking place following a major emergency event. You're about to get briefed on that. So I would say that some timeframes would need to be a little more flexible following a major hurricane.
So for this week, I think everybody would understand, but it happens every week. And the public is constantly contacting me, probably my colleagues, and not talking about just your area.
Understood.
But there are constantly things that are missing, reports that are sent. We have 100 items typically in a week, and we have to read the agenda multiple times in this because it changes constantly. We never know what the backups are. And Marty can tell us what the rules already are, but it seems to me that if the agenda items are due on Friday, that if the backup items aren't in by noon on Monday, that we would automatically continue the items. Do we have any rule on that?
Actually, we do, and I'm looking for them. One of the rules, by the way, is that electronic media should be received at least 48 hours in advance, and the electronic media must be delivered to CTTV at least 48 hours prior to broadcast. That's Rule 5D. And then there is a rule, and I believe it's actually, my recollection is that it's the Thursday before. Certainly that has,
There's been a lot of discussion about transparency and accountability,
Yes.
and the public can't have transparency if they can't see the documents as the backup, because they don't even know what the items are about. Typically, there's a cover sheet as a placeholder, and I'm not talking about any particular department. I'm not trying to hold up anything today, but somehow we need to make sure that the public has plenty of time to look at the backup documents before, and we have time to look at them. We should not get presented something that the public has never seen, that we've never had a chance to read.
Can I,
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
Please. Were you finished reading the rules of procedure?
let me find it in the meantime, because I know it's in here.
I didn't
That's
want,
general
you
policies.
you
Here
were
we go.
starting and you didn't get cut, you got cut off. I just wanted you to finish on that. While you're looking, Councilman Good.
Actually, here's what it says. This is Rule 7A. All petitions, communications, staff reports, resolutions, ordinances, and other matters intended for the consideration of the City Council shall be filed by the office of the city clerk on or before 2 p.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting of City Council. The city clerk shall assign, the City Council in turn shall assign such petitions, communications, resolutions, ordinances, and other matters to the most appropriate placement on the agenda, taking into consideration the request made at the time of placement on the agenda. Ordinances and resolutions related to fees are to be placed under staff reports. And Mr. Chairman, I'll also remind council that with regard to the continuances that were made to 12, 13, and 15, and that's going to be discussed next week, an email from the Chief of Staff says it's going to be part of a comprehensive process about how these sort of things are presented to council, and that might be an appropriate time to bring it up as well at that point. Certainly, the issue of having the ability for you to be able to see the material in advance gives you the time to be able to formulate questions that makes your time with staff at the meeting that much more productive to you.
Councilman Goods.
That was my question. I wanted him to make sure he read it in its entirety. I think the issue is, Mr. Carlson said we do get it late, and we have a lot to research before a Thursday morning council meeting, getting it on Wednesday or late night. I just want to know what that time frame was, if it needs to move back, because it's more time. I mean, there's no need to try to put something jamming on the agenda if we know it's a big hefty item. It should be in a couple of weeks in advance, so we can be able to look in and review the material. So that might be something during that period that we need to look at, if the time needs to be moved back, so staff can have adequate time to prepare for this council to get the material, so we can understand and make a based decision for the citizens of Tampa.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on that. Also, the things about, for instance, a PowerPoint that's going to be presented to you. If you have that PowerPoint in advance, you'll at least have an idea of what kind of decision points you will be asked to make, rather than having to do it, hearing the presentation for the first time at a workshop, and also give you the opportunity to ask questions of staff prior to the workshop to be able to maybe expedite the workshop itself. So thank you.
Councilman Carlson.
Could I just make a motion to see if we could get agreement on a general statement, on a new policy? I would just like to make a motion that we ask staff to automatically request a continuance if they're not ready to upload the documents by the deadline on that is cited in the rules on, was it Thursday or Friday?
Well, this rule has not been very strictly enforced for Thursday, but normally what happens is by the time of,
Well, what's the deadline say?
the deadline in your current rules state 2 p.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting of
So-
City Council.
So I would make a motion that we make a general statement that staff would automatically ask for a continuance if they're unable to upload the complete documentation by Thursday at 2 following City Council's rules, and that documents would be added as an exception with consent of council in the agenda setting.
And I don't mean to belabor this because I don't want to, but we have a long agenda in front of us, and we're having this discussion now at the beginning when we could be doing that later.
Under new business?
Do you have a second on your motion? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to vote no on it, because there are certain circumstances where it can't be prepared that quickly, that we have time-sensitive things that need to be done immediately. Do you have a second on Councilman Carlson's motion? Councilwoman Hurtak.
If you might consider changing that to a discussion on October 20th, when we are going to be discussing these other issues about cleaning up the agenda and making things a little clearer. That's when my motion for the budget items to include a one-page report in SIRE and like tightening things up, if we could move it to that day to discuss. And so, because I would love to have some time to think about how because I think Thursday 2 p.m. is a little too early, but I would agree with you, Monday at noon.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, and just to the point about the business we have today, the problem is that there's a presentation that's going to go on about $7 million. I haven't seen any of the backup yet. The public hasn't seen the backup. That's just one example out of maybe 20 on the agenda today. And so to be able to do the work we need to do, we need to be able to read the documents in advance. I would withdraw my other motion and make a motion that we specifically put on the agenda on October 20th a discussion about meeting deadlines to provide transparency of information to the public
Second.
prior to our meetings.
We have a motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilwoman Hurtak. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank
Is
you.
there any opposed? Councilor Shelby.
Yes, thank you. And just a reminder, Council, with regard to things that are time-sensitive, certainly the administration does bring to your attention things that require a walk-on, but in the interest of public having the opportunity to know what is going to be there, and certainly having the opportunity of council knowing in advance, so it's prepared to ask questions, transparency being the case, and the sunshine law being, the spirit of the sunshine law. Just so you know, absent exigent circumstances, a motion to continue is always in order. So depending on what council feels it needs to know before it makes its decision.
Councilman Miranda.
Well, when you heard the word walk-on, I guess you're gonna have a reason, what's the emergency? So, because you might have one day, and none for 2 or 3 weeks, you might have 10 in one day. So therefore, who's gonna determine what is the walk-on necessity to have or not to have?
By saying, thank you. Mr. O'Hara.
Thank you, and we won't solve this today, but something council may consider is some of these backup items are surfaced after the agenda is submitted during our individual city council briefings, so you may want to consider the timeframes associated with that. The agenda item itself has been turned in on time, but questions surface following that for additional information and items. Thank you.
Mr. Mr. Massey or Ms. Travis, did you want to say anything?
I think to Mr. O'Hara's point, a lot of the last minute items that you all see are response to questions or actually requests that come from council for specific resolutions or items that you all want to see on a fairly quick basis. So I just want to make sure that surfaced as well, but we can talk about this in more detail on the 20th. So.
Thank you, Ms. Travis. Last word.
Yep, just good morning, council. Just food for thought. 7 days ago, most of us administrators were sleeping on cots in the EOC. And so to bring an agenda to you, turning around this agenda and working through SIRE while dealing with Hurricane Ian and preparing for that, I'm just asking for your consideration from a staffing standpoint, not just the administrator, but the clerk's office and all the staff that works behind us to make sure that we get these items to you in a thoughtful way. And also when you make requests of staff and motions at a previous meeting for us to respond to it at the very next meeting, those kinds of items cause for us submitting things at the last minute. But I want to assure you that we're all operating on a transparent basis, almost so much so that a lot of the questions come from us being as transparent as we can. So I appreciate your indulgence. Thank you.
Mr. Shelby.
Yes, thank you. And towards that end, I will also state and echo that council and the clerk have had this agreement for many years, for as long as I can remember, no 1 week motions, because the turnaround time, Ms. Lucas, you would agree with that? That the turnaround time, both for staff and the clerk's office, is especially difficult. And also in defense of the administration, what I will say is the memos that you are getting now to reduce the time of your staff reports are much more extensive than they used to be, and providing more information, so it takes much more effort to prepare that kind of information in advance. So council should be mindful of how long it would take staff to be able to turn it around before they could bring it back to you in a timely fashion to give you the information that you need.
Thank you for that point. Our staff reports are supposed to be just that, staff reports 5 minutes. If we want more information or we want to have discussion, let's turn those into workshops. Councilman Goose.
I can agree with some of that. I can agree with some of that. Everything is not a workshop item. Everything is not a workshop item. Some things can be discussed and out of the way instead of kicking it down the road. But I do agree that if we know they're hot, heavy items, or staff knows they're a hot, heavy item, then staff should be able to tell us that's a hot, heavy item, and it's going to be delayed beforehand if we even put it on the agenda. So why even put something on the agenda if it's not already ready, or you don't have the backup materials? Why put it on there? Just hold it back until you're ready. I mean, some things in your circumstances we can deal with. But if you know you don't have all the materials, it's not ready, or you know this council is going to ask a barrage of questions, why put yourself through that or put this council through that? Just do the right thing and just go ahead and wait till it's ready to go, or put your continuance in and say we're not ready to go.
If we can, Mr. Chairman.
we're
I know,
going
but
into a long discussion,
and that's
we
what I
have
was
a long
about to say.
agenda.
That's what
Please,
that-
Mr. Shelby,
what-
then I'm gonna have final comments, and we're gonna move forward.
What I was about to say is, council, certainly this is your agenda, this is your meeting. Certainly the administration plays a very integral role, but my point is this. I think it's best discussed, not now, but at a later date, and we'll be able to address these issues, because I am going to be revising the rules of procedure as we move forward.
As I have found, we tend to ask staff to come back and give us a report and do it in a week or 2 weeks. We have to be careful on how many agenda items. October 20th, we have 18 staff reports. We have to be careful and allow staff enough time to prepare their reports to us so that we, and of course the residents, have all the information that is necessary.
Move to approve the agenda. And the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Mr. Vieira.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I have here with me my good friend, Mr. Travis Coy, who is here to speak on Breast Cancer Awareness Month because of his late wife, Teresa Pierre Coy. And Mr. Sullivan, if you could put some pictures up there that we had of Teresa, sir, if you don't mind, just for the public to see this wonderful, beautiful woman who was taken from us too soon. Travis, who will be speaking, is an assistant state attorney here in Hillsborough County who was admitted to the Florida Bar in 2003. He is past president of the George Edgecombe Bar Association, as well as Hillsborough High School's first recipient of a George Edgecombe Bar Association scholarship. He went to FSU and then Stetson College of Law, and he will be speaking about his late wife, Teresa Pierre Coy, who I know Councilman Goods was kind enough to give a commendation for, and we thank you for that, sir, very much so. Teresa was a very good woman who I knew, and in fact, I thought so highly of her that I remember some time ago I'd asked her to consider joining us on Tampa City Council until I found out that she didn't live in the city. That's how much I loved her. So Travis, coming up, buddy. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. I want to say a special thank you to family and friends that are present with us physically and also that are watching virtually. And a special thank you to Councilman Goods. I appreciate the commendation that you presented much earlier this year. And also a special thank you to Councilman Vieira for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you all as it relates to my wife and also as it relates to breast cancer awareness. Teresa showed us during the last 5 years of her life that cancer doesn't define who you are. Cancer is what she had, but it wasn't who she was. She lived her life to the fullest without regrets and always found opportunities to serve others. Teresa continued to advocate for those who had no voice. She continued to pour her time, her energy, and her expertise into our communities. Teresa continued to love and support her family, her friends, her colleagues, and her mentees. She never stopped laughing. She never stopped smiling, and she definitely didn't stop being sassy. Even in her pain and her discomfort, she always found time to lift up others, to encourage others. She had a legitimate excuse to essentially give up on life, but instead, the fighting spirit in her arose to the occasion time after time. So when you ask, what does Breast Cancer Awareness Month mean to me? What it meant to Teresa? The answer is twofold. First, it means to keep fighting and then to fight some more. Because as soon as you stop living, As soon as you stop enjoying life, that's when this horrible disease has already won. And then the other part of that answer is quite simple. It's a call to action. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with wearing a pink ribbon, but there's way more to be done. Teresa understood that and made it a point to educate and bring awareness to this terrible disease anytime she had a chance. And as Councilman Vieira just mentioned, I remember she was in front of you all last year discussing the disparities amongst Black women and breast cancer. She left a legacy of servitude that I now find myself carrying. I never imagined in many years that I would be a widow and a single parent at the age of 45 years. I never imagined losing my best friend and the love of my life just at the age of 41. I never thought I would have to tell a 5-year-old that his mother is no longer here. I never considered having to tell a 5-year-old that the woman who kissed and cuddled him at night is gone. She won't be there for any graduation. She won't be there for his wedding, and she won't experience what it's like to be a grandparent. My life's goal has now turned to help prevent people from suffering from such a loss as we have. That's why I've dedicated my life to help fund and promote breast cancer research. Giving to breast cancer research goes beyond finding a cure. It provides support to the caregivers who are often overlooked. They need emotional and psychological support as well. It provides financial support for patients who can't return to work or don't have a disability policy. It supports funding to address the issues associated with the racial disparity with Black women and breast cancer. African American women have a 31% breast cancer mortality rate, the highest of any U.S. racial or ethnic group. These are just a few of the examples of the impact a person's dollars, a person's monies can have on the eradication of this disease. So my prayer this month and the months to follow is that one day my son, Thaddeus Coy, will live in a world where this disease that took his mother no longer exists. But to accomplish this, we must be willing to actually take action and not just speak about that action. Thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta name the names. Thank you. And if I may, Mr. Chair, I neglected first, I wanted to introduce some people who are here to support Travis and the late Teresa. They include Susan Johnson Velez, acting individually, Camaria Pettis-Mackel. We also have viewing telephone or via the internet, late Teresa's father, Ernest Jean Pierre, her stepfather, Ernest Thomas. We have here Mr. Cornelius Demps, Michael Paparesta, and Colette, his wife, Anya K. Francis, and Sonia Hill, who are here. I just wanted to mention those names. Thank you. Thank you. And they're going to be saying things.
Councilman Goods.
Knowledge is power. I truly believe that. Words mean a lot. I believe people have heard your words this morning. When I made that accommodation, my bestie, my best friend in the world, her line sister, called me and said, "You better do something. There's no more Sunday dinner for you." So I had to make sure Miss Deidre understood, because I felt her pain, because she felt her pain, because I remember the late nights where we were up late on that line working. That's a big line. But that line was a powerful line with a lot of powerful individuals. Princess Driscoll was on that line as well. I think she was number 33 or 34.
I think so, yeah.
So I know the folks in that line. I know what they went through, and I know the sisterhood they had. Matter of fact, Tuesday, they just had their anniversary on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Got that call. So I want to say, we're with you. We stand with you. Her line sisters miss her, because anybody know how it is to be in the bond when you're on those late nights and doing that work, crossing those burning sands. You miss your people. So I say, thank you for allowing us to share her with us. I say thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, sir, for being here and for honoring her memory and for your words and the message that you've shared with everyone today. And you said it. You hope that your son one day lives in a world where that word cancer is eradicated. And I mean, it affects so many people. I had a call the other day from a friend of mine whose spouse wanted to visit me and say goodbye because she's in her last days. Yesterday I talked to my friend Joe, whose brother has 2 months to live, and he's 52, 53. And yesterday I saw a friend of mine who's a nurse, and I asked her how she's doing. I've known her all my life, literally since I was born. And she said, I've had a rough week because I was with a patient who's 14 with ovarian cancer that has metastasized, 14 years old. And it's exhausting when it's one after another after another. So I can't follow with what you said today because the words were so powerful, but thank you for being here, and we will always honor your wife and remember her. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Coy, I saw your tear in your eye like you have right now, and I share that tear. I share that tear because my wife passed away December 13th of 2009 from lung cancer. And I know, brother, what you're going through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hurtak.
I really do want to say thank you for coming and bringing this incredibly important issue to everyone's attention again, and just take the time to also mention that not only can we help monetarily and through funds, but in reminding women that breast self-exams are incredibly important, and if you do not know how to do one, just Google it. There's a ton of things online, and just to make sure that you keep your mammogram appointments. They're very important. They are not fun, I can tell you that, but they're really critical. So I just want to take that time to remind those in the audience and those listening to just another way to help. So thank you so much for bringing this today. I'm sorry for your loss.
Councilman Carlson.
Usually after someone speaks, we all jump to the microphone and speak quickly, and you saw us all hesitate because we all felt what you said so closely. Your words were so perfect, and it's impossible to follow you. Thank you for honoring Teresa and talking about this important topic. Please make sure that we have the information we need to make sure we broadcast it. We all have social media channels and others, whatever we can do to support. And I don't think your son's here today, but now we need the village to help you raise him. And so let us know, personally and as a group, if we can do something to help, keep his mother's name alive and inspire him to do great things. Thank you.
She's smiling down on you right now. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you. Thank you, brother. Councilman Maniscalco.
Good morning, my colleagues on the Tampa City Council. This is my friend Robin Bethune. We met not too long ago because we were contacted to, as you know, City Hall will light up in different colors for different reasons and different occasions, and this was to have City Hall lit up and other structures for metastatic breast cancer awareness. And Robin is the mother to Erica Griffiths, who passed away after a long and courageous battle. And she has worked tirelessly to raise funds, to bring awareness, to keep Erica's memory and spirit alive, which it is. Every time we speak her name, every time her mother speaks her name, she's still alive and she continues to inspire many. So it is Tampa City Council's honor to present this commendation to Mrs. Robin Bethune, mother to the late Erica Griffiths, who valiantly fought the battle of metastatic breast cancer until her passing on May 7, 2021. Throughout Erica's nearly 5-year journey, her devotion and advocacy for the fight against this horrific disease did not go unnoticed. She was highlighted in both visual and print media as an advocate for increased funding for MBC research, as well as being an avid fundraiser. Erica was and is an inspiration to so many. She was forced to focus prematurely on end-of-life plans, preparing a life for her young daughter and leaving behind her devoted husband and family. We thank her brave mother, Robin, for continuing her daughter's legacy in this courageous and necessary fight to ensure awareness and a cure for metastatic breast cancer. So it is Tampa City Council's profound privilege to present this commendation on the 6th day of October, 2022. Then if you'd like to say a few words.
I'm not very good at speaking, but I promised my daughter that I would continue the fight for her. She was diagnosed de novo, which means right from the beginning, with metastatic breast cancer, and that means that it's already left the breast. People don't die of breast cancer. The pink ribbons are for awareness. You die when it leaves the breast. She was breastfeeding. Imagine getting that phone call that I got. They did the mammogram and the ultrasound. They did the biopsies. They found out it was already in her liver and her bones. She fought for almost 5 years, different treatments, chemos, radiation. It spread throughout her body by the end, and she left behind a 6-year-old little girl. So what we're trying to bring attention to right now is the month of October is dedicated to pink ribbons and almost a sensationalism of Save the Tatas and all of that, which is not what people who truly have metastatic breast cancer are thinking about. They're trying to save their lives. And keep in mind, too, that men get metastatic breast cancer as well. 115 people are dying every day from this disease, and people aren't paying attention because we're buying the pink ribbons and coming to find out that only 5% of that money goes to research. So like we were just talking about with Teresa, who passed away, we need research. So as I have been screaming from the top of a mountaintop as my daughter died and didn't think anybody was listening, Councilman Maniscalco and his assistant Lisa did. And we lit up Tampa last year. We're getting ready to light it up again. We actually got the Skyway this year, but a transformer blew, so apparently we're not going to be able to do it on time. But the idea and the meaning behind all of this, again, is just to realize that we need people to donate for research. That's what we're really looking for. When Erica was going through her treatments, during that time, there were at least 2 or 3 new drugs that came about that kept her alive a little bit longer. So anyway, thank you for listening. I'm overwhelmed and very, very grateful, and I know my daughter is watching down from heaven, and I hope she's proud.
And also, you had mentioned it, but October 13th, we're going to light City Hall up.
We are, and also the airport. We got the airport,
And the
too.
airport. Good.
So
You know,
thank you.
awareness is so important, and you being here and the gentleman before you to let the public know, you know, like you said, it's not just about pink ribbons, even though it's good to show the support, but it's the lack of funding. It's the lack of awareness. It's the lack of people going to get tested. To catch this early if possible and increase their ratio for success and healing. But thank you for being an inspiration.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Sure.
Ms. Suling, do we have FDOT on the line? Okay. We're now going to have an update from the Florida Department of Transportation.
Morning, Chair, morning, Council, Deputy, Mobility Department. I'd like to introduce Ed Albritton with Florida Department of Transportation. Ed's a friend, former colleague. We worked together at Hillsborough County. Ed's going to present on a signalization project and a couple of other initiatives by FDOT, specifically at 22nd and the Selman Expressway. This is a hazard. This is the signalization will improve safety in the area. It will also improve access for all of the development that is happening within the Ybor City area from a safety and mobility standpoint. At this time, I'll hand it over to Ed. Ed, take it away.
Thanks, Vic. So I'll get right into this. I don't have much time. This is an aerial photo of the area where we've highlighted some of the sort of trip generation areas of interest that we feel are important to make this project important. The first is to the south of the project is the Port of Tampa. We had some joint funding from our freight partners to help bring this signalization to realization. Also to the west and to the north, both in downtown Tampa and Ybor City, both of those, both retail and high density residential footprints are expanding. So we feel like this is also a good project to marry with some of that development. This is just a closer view of the interchange itself, the stars representing where the actual signalization infrastructure will be installed. Here we have a look at the east and westbound approaches as they currently exist. They're both stop controlled. The signal met the crash history warrant for installation, and these approaches gave us a total of 39 left turn crashes, 22 with possible injuries, and 1 fatality. Here is the current northbound and southbound approaches, and they had a total of 23 left turn crashes and 13 possible injuries. The study years, by the way, were 2014 to 2019. Some of the project details and items where we feel like we're going to really improve. There's currently a shared use path on the east side of 22nd Street, which we're going to add a pedestrian crossing to and, join into that. There's an at-grade CSX rail crossing just to the south of the interchange. That's obviously going to be integrated with the signal. That'll give us much more efficient traffic movement through the area as it pertains to rail crossings. There's some different types of median treatments through this segment. We're going to get that all consistent and cleaned up and hopefully take away some of the ambiguity that's currently out there. Currently, there are no pedestrian features at all on the south side of the interchange, and obviously we're going to change that with this design, high emphasis crosswalks, lighting, all of those. This is a quick and dirty rendition of what the design is going to look like. Shows the mast arm location, shows the special emphasis crosswalks. The lighting will be upgraded. It does show the at-grade crossing as well. And we'll be given protected left turns onto the crosstown. This will be the north interchange intersection. You can see we've designed a 2-stage ped crossing, which we feel really improves the pedestrian safety through this segment and visibility. And also see where we've joined the high emphasis or special emphasis crosswalks to the pedestrian path on the south or on 22nd Street on the east side. The countermeasures, obviously, that we're going to do, we're doing the protected left turns, protected pedestrian crossings, including the 2-stage. And we feel like the modification of the median treatments that's currently out there will, like I said, it will take away some of that ambiguity and hopefully prevent the likelihood of wrongly driving. The design is complete already. Construction is scheduled to start in the first quarter of 2023, and that's mostly due to supply chain issues. We had already anticipated being in construction, but lead time on just about everything has gone through the roof, so that one's got pushed a bit. The next one is one we have completed already. It's at Highland and Chelsea. This is an overview of the area itself, just to give you an idea of where it's at. A little closer view of that shows you, wanted to point out, obviously, the proximity of the middle school, which is, a huge driver in the need for this project in the first place. This is the design that we installed out there. You can see we've got high emphasis, special emphasis crosswalks. We're installing, or we have installed, button activated rectangular rapid flashing beacons to get across Highland. We've also got some advanced devices of the same type. Just when these buttons are activated, the advanced beacons will also activate as well to give those vehicles advanced notification that someone intends on crossing the street. This is a view of the actual finished product. Looking from one of the corners, you can see the button activated beacons are on the opposite corner. We had to rebuild both of those ramps on that side. You can see all the improvements, improved markings, truncated domes, special emphasis crosswalks, and once again, the beacons. And of course, I want to close with a safety message. Stop speeding before it stops you. Slow down. For more than 2 decades, speeding is involved in 1/3 of overall motor vehicle fatalities. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hurtak.
I want to say thank you for this. First of all, for the Chelsea crossing is great. I've noticed the improved painting and signage. It has been a really nice addition to the neighborhood. But I also wanted to talk to you about the Selman ramp. I think that's a great project. I have a couple of concerns. The pedestrian, the east side pedestrian walkway that basically connects Palmetto Beach to the rest of the city. That is pretty much the only way a lot of those residents connect. I have biked that myself. It's really hard to find a way to get across the street, even at Adamo. It's a very difficult crossing. And then once you get there, there are multiple crossings to get on and off the Selman that as a pedestrian or cyclist are very dangerous. It looks like you're working on a couple of those intersections. Are you actually going to tackle all the intersections? That's one question. And then the second question is, what are you going to be doing during construction to make sure that those folks who use that as their primary means of connecting to the city, to the rest of the city, can still do that?
The way this particular interchange is built, there are some of those on-ramps, like the northbound 22nd to go eastbound on to the crosstown. That happens south of the interchange itself, so that's not included in this signalization project. The other ones, I believe we're covering, and I know that we are in the process of designing signalization for the Adamo and 26 signal, which, if you put 22nd up and over, it will give you another crossing to get across Adamo. And I'm not sure of the overall trail plans. I know there's a trail on the north side of Adamo currently. There's a trail that comes up 22nd. I would assume that there are some people plans to marry those up. But that's a little bit out of my purview.
If I may add to that, Ed, and Councilwoman, I think you make a great point. Generally, the Palmetto area is not as well connected from a multimodal standpoint with Ybor or the Channel District and certainly downtown. These are conversations that we're having with Secretary Gwynn and stakeholders. We're aware of both the Ybor and Palmetto communities having made requests to improve the conditions. So at this time, I don't have a specific update, and certainly relative to this project, Ed may not, but we will follow up on the same soon. And I look forward to providing a briefing on that.
I would really appreciate it. Thank you for that, but I know that community will need a way to get through during that construction. So that's a high priority for me. So thank you very much. I will definitely follow up with you.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Albritton. Thank you very much for being with us today and making your presentations. Some time back, there was talk about Malfunction Junction with another exit going to Ybor City right before the curve. Is that still on? I haven't heard back. Maybe it's there, it's not there. I don't know. Heading east. I'm not trying to throw you a curve or anything like that. Never had a good one anyway.
We'll follow up and get back with you.
No, no problem. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I have a couple quick questions, sir. On your Kennedy project, stay with 60, I'm seeing bicycle and pedestrian improvements. We are seeing more and more residential being built along that corridor. Is there any plans for a divided bike lane and more lighted crossings?
Once again, I'm not aware of anything that encompassing, especially on Kennedy, but.
All right, I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm just going to say this. If we're going to have bike lanes and we're going to have more pedestrians and more residential in there, that speed limit's going to have to drop. So I'll get back with you. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Agenda item number 5. We have a presentation for a reappointment. Okay, so I thought, see, Miss Shirley Fox Knoll was going to be here. Even though they're out of town, Miss Shirley Fox Knoll has to give the presentation.
Okay. Good morning, Council. Shirley Fox Knoll, City Clerk. I'm here regarding item number 5, regarding the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Mr. Sean Wilson sent us a email saying, "Dear City Council, good morning and thank you very much for considering reappointing me to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. I was called out of my hometown on business and I'm not able to be present with you today. I am very interested in continuing in this capacity and I would sincerely appreciate your support." Again, that is from Mr. Sean Wilson, who's the founder and president of Blue Sky Communities, LLC. And he's asking for reappointment.
We have a motion to reappoint by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Goods.
Ms. Fox knows, is that board made up of all mayoral appointments or is there any council appointments on that board?
It's a combination. There are, it's probably half and half. He was all city council. Mr. Sean Wilson is city council. And there are some vacancies on the board with mayor, council, or city council.
All right, thank you. Please get me those updates. I was wondering about those vacancies. I have some people I think look through might get on that board.
Okay.
Mr. Shelby.
I believe, how many members are there? I believe it's 11. Is it 6 mayoral and 5 council? Did I understand that correctly?
11, yes.
There are 11. So interestingly, council, the ordinance that allows that board to exist says that they can continue to serve after their term expires until somebody else is reappointed. So there are people who have, their terms have expired. For instance, Mr. Wilson, his term has expired, and now he gets to be reappointed. The other thing is it only allows for 2 3-year terms. The term is 3 years. And those are, and I talked with Mr. Massey about it, very specific categories that you look for in order to fill those seats. So you have to be very specific as it is. But what I'm going to do is I believe work with the city attorney's office to be able to address some of those concerns, because one of the issues that I have is how much time has elapsed since their term has expired. But I'll address that with the department.
Mr. Chairman?
I don't know if I made that clear.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. And when we talk about Pacific, because I know some of these boards have specific folks and categories. But I think at least some of these board, with those boards, I think you need to have some regular lay citizens on some of these boards to give opinions as well.
And one of the questions that comes up, though, is because it's so specific and some of those positions may be hard to fill, you may not want to have a term limitation on that, or you may not want to have terms of 3 years so short, so that would be amending the ordinance, but that's something that can come down the road. But with the support of the department, of course.
Before I go to Councilman Vieira, Ms. Travis, you look as if you wish to say something.
We'll be happy to look at it and bring it back to you and make any recommendations for you. We would appreciate your reappointment of Mr. Wilson, please.
Councilman Vieira.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to speak on Mr. Wilson, that if any of y'all know him, and just to put some good words out there, you know, he is a good dude. He is an amazing guy, and when it comes to affordable housing and making sure that you know, we build housing for people who are struggling to get into the middle class and people who are struggling to stay in the working class, you know, Mr. Wilson is awesome. I mean, when I saw
would like
his
him
name,
to keep him on the board.
yeah,
Thank you.
he's awesome. So I just wanted to
Despite
say
Mr.
that
Shepherd's
just
concern.
as a word that he's a really good guy, so.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. You want to make a statement?
I'm glad all this came up because if I remember last election, the council served 1 month more, wasn't it? The same thing. So, because of whatever reason it was, I forgot the reason. Right, supervisor of election. So, I mean, that's how it is.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote, please.
Vieira.
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Miranda.
Yes.
Hurtak.
Yes.
Carlson. Goods.
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent at vote.
And also, that would include directing the city council attorney to prepare a resolution consistent with council's motion. Thank you, is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Ms. Shirley. All right, Chief Bennett, are you with us? I guess he's taking a sick day. Chief Tripp.
Good morning, Council. Chief Tripp, Tampa Fire Rescue. Of course, I'm not Chief of Staff, but I'm going to fill in where I can, and I believe Chief of CFO going to fill in as well. And I think we have a couple of slides. If not, I have them that I can put up.
Mr. Chairman, we missed public comment.
This is asked by Chief of Staff to give a report on the hurricanes we passed. Then we will go to public comment. Thank you.
That's the way you wish to do it, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, without objection, by unanimous consent? Because that goes into the staff report section, but that's fine, if that's council's pleasure.
Okay. All right. Good morning once again. First and foremost, I want to give my prayers out to the community in South Florida that was actually presented with Hurricane Ian that caused a lot of devastation. So just know that the city of Tampa deployed some personnel to go down and assist with some relief. We sent 41 law enforcement officers, and we have 15 sworn personnel as well as 1 mechanic. And so far, they have been there since Saturday morning. They have done over 1,000 911 calls, clear out their queue. That was on bike log. And I think they've rescued and assisted probably over 1,000 families. So I don't have that the last number that I had, which was Tuesday, which was like 900. So first of all, want to thank TSA for hosting the public safety assets when we had to evacuate some of the stations, as well as some of the equipment, helicopters and stuff. TSA actually opened their doors to us to assist with that. So once again, like I say, Tampa Bay, basically we're fortunate and to have excellent coordination and communication with our state, regional, and local and federal partners. We started this communication probably about 2 weeks prior to this event, once we knew the storm was kind of headed that way. And as we put on the screen, we have the National Preparedness Gold Line, the core capabilities that we try to do. Of course, we try to do everything we can to prevent. You know, we can't stop Mother Nature. Biggest thing we can do is help prepare for her. So when we look at how we're going to prevent, of course, we definitely want to get the message out to the communities as soon as possible. We want to protect as much as we can as far as some of the threats and some of the things that we did as far as protecting the community, provide different services when it comes to sandbags and the line. I'll give you a little bit more of that data. We want to do everything we can to kind of mitigate any kind of hazards, potential hazards. Just to let you know that Tampa Fire Rescue assisted with evacuating some of the assisted living facilities that was in South Tampa to higher grounds, meaning like Kindred. We evacuated 41 critical patients up to Kindred North, or Kindred Central, I'm sorry, and also Grand Court. We assisted with 31 senior citizens there. So one of the other things we do, and of course we want to continue to respond, Tampa Fire Rescue continue responding through calls until it was unsafe for us not to respond, but fortunately we didn't have anything in the queue that allowed us not to respond. So we definitely want to respond to our communities as well as help prevent and help provide as much safety as we can. When they are in need, we definitely want to respond, and of course it's all about recovery. We want to do it in a timely fashion, so I'm kind of going to go over a timeline of some of the events that took place. So once Tampa was targeted as far as in the cone, we started with communicating with local and community partners. We started having press conferences. The City of Tampa EOC went to a level 2 on Monday and activated level 1 on Tuesday morning at 7:30 and did not end until Thursday evening at 2000 hours, 8 o'clock p.m. and went back to a level 3, which was just basically monitoring. So throughout this whole time when we was over there, we had press conferences twice a day to continue to inform the community what was going on. Prior to that, some of the things that we also did as far as help preventing, we got the information out about sandbags. We got the information about, making sure they watched the weather reports and stuff. We was in direct communication with the National Weather Service. We had multiple meetings with the National Weather Service twice a day to get information and inform the communities on. So if you can put the next slide up. So this is just some of the information that has taken place. Basically, I'll give you some more numbers. We distributed over 100,000 sandbags over a 3-day period. Once we realized that this was coming, and of course, Hillsborough County gave the closing of the schools and stuff, we started helping families, seniors, and of course, our vulnerable population. We opened up, we initially opened up 16 out-of-school camps to help parents, for their kids, a safe place, while some of them had to continue to work until their job closed them down. We ended up closing 3 of them that was in Zone A and B, and of course, we served over 300 children. With that, we had shelters. We went full activation with the shelters. Some of the locations were Middleton High School, Pizzo, Lockhart, and Wharton High School. So those was the ones that was in the city of Tampa and was actually staffed by City of Tampa employees around the clock. We had over 1,100 guests throughout those shelters, and of course, we want to give a thanks to, put this one slide up, that's not up there. I just want to show this one if I could. Is it off?
No, just ask them to put up the
Oh, there it is. Get it? Yep. Okay, so I kind of wanted to show that because, a lot of times we don't get the call takers enough. We have a call taker ever since the RNC, the City of Tampa, actually, we actually established a call center that have humans and not just voice auto. So these individuals take calls. Soon as this took place, we actually, get it straight. We activated the call center, and they actually received over almost 2,500 calls throughout the time frame that they was there. Information was given out. These call centers representative also assisted with the county because our numbers actually publicized throughout the county with information. anywhere from down trees, traffic light issues, how can they get help, how can they get the special needs shelters. These call center takers was actually was wonderful, and they helped the community out a lot. So we also, as far as code enforcement, we visited over 100 ALF facilities, inspected their generators, make sure they was operational. And basically, we actually reached out to the vulnerable population, Tampa Hope residents. Parks and Rec staff transported over 100 residents to one of the shelters of Middleton High School. Throughout the evening, up until the area got to the point where we was unsafe for public safety to respond, it was very minimum. We didn't have any calls in the queue, but overnight, as far as fire, we had 21 calls for power lines down, 6 down tree limbs, and 1 house fire that happened to have a tree that fall on, and 1 transformer fire. And basically, once the storm was over, our ERCs, the emergency response crews, was pushed out. We had full activations on full activation at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. And we had 3 ERCs that was pushed out. We had Tampa Bay Boulevard Elementary School, Forest Hill, and Oak Park. ERC 1 had 16 push crews, ERC 2 had 7 push crews, and ERC 3 had 7 push crews as well. As far as mobility, we had about 71 signal intersections that went dark, and all of them were bike up running by 1,700 hours on Friday. As far as damages to parks and rec, we had about 59 parks that was affected with tree damage. We actually, as far as debris management, we have the roam yard that has been designated for city debris management. So both the debris management contractors are there. It's been activated. So debris has collected, started Monday, October the 3rd, as far as picking it up. So if you have any questions, that's pretty much, I'll try to give you a short, simple report of.
Councilman Goode.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, thank the city staff and those who are out there serving and working. I want to say thank you to them, because it's kind of difficult to be away from your own family when things are going on, especially what potential storm we had. I did go out, visit a lot of the shelters at Irwin, went through the 2nd floor. Great job of some of the fire guys that were there and the staff that was there, working with our elderly and also our folks that need medical needs. That was very critical to have that open. Also went by Middleton. A lot of folks there at Middleton. Great job with the staff there as well. But I did notice a few things that I want you to add to the after action plan. Those of you who don't know an after action plan, usually when you have an incident, you get a round table and you write up the things that worked and things that didn't work or could be improved. A couple of things I want to talk about is the sandbags. 18th Street Park was known as Al Barnes. I was over there several times, helped do bags. We need another location. My thing is this, I've talked about that for 2 years in a row when we had storms. We have a county jail that you have non-violent offenders over there. Sand can be taken over to that jail, get with the sheriff, and those sandbags can be filled. We know a storm is coming, they can be prepared and ready to go. Those folks can be in that line, because people were staying 2 and 3 hours in a line going all the way back. Some folks who are very low income don't have gas, basically to stay in that line to get sandbags. That's a problem for me. So I think we can kind of do better on the sandbag situation. We know something's coming, have prepared bags ready, get with the sheriff, have those guys to be able to get those bags, be ready, get them prepared. Then again, maybe some of our workers can have some bags on some trucks to go to some of these communities that some of our seniors don't have cars. They don't need sandbags. A lot of that happened. I took some sandbags to some folks. Just other ways of trying to improve it, but definitely with the sandbag situation, that's got to be improved. I know we ran out of sand. That happens because we thought it was coming. So, of course, that could happen. No problem with that. But I think a better efficiency of dealing with the sandbag is to, even with some of the high school kids, we know it's coming before then. We could have probably got some of the football teams at Middleton, those guys, to come out, pre-do bags and have that ready to go. And they could just dump them in and keep going, keep the line moving. But 2 or 3 hours, that's a long time to be in a line. Again, and it was closed because my brother went to go get bags. He was there at 5 o'clock. Thought it was going to open at 7. Apparently, it didn't open up to 9. People were waiting. Second thing is Tico. We'll probably make a motion later on in reference to a Tico representative coming to this council. I found that apparently that Tico want to know what is their preparedness as it relates to making sure those lines are cleared before storm or during the year, because I'm finding out with the power outages is that they won't do anything. Some of the lines will come out because some of the power lines have gone through the trees, and it's wet, and they won't work on it. Then I hear some people say, I talked to a Tico employee, he said, well, some people come out and some of the residents say, don't cut my tree, but you're hurting other people in the area. So we gotta, if that's the case, we gotta figure out a way to where, if that's a hindrance, we gotta fix that so the power outages can be up versus being down for so many amount of time. So what is the maintenance in the city of the trees? Gotta know that. When we talk about disabled folks, River Pines and a few other places, I don't know if we can get something to those management companies to make sure that they're prepared, because a lot of those folks were calling, especially when they're out because they had insulin, not being refrigerated, a lot of issues like that. We talked about folks on dialysis. I think if they're on dialysis and they're going to a place every day, we should be able to. I know we contacted the emergency management person, Mr. Pisa, I believe it is, but they couldn't get the information to the place in time. That's okay. It was a rush to do it, but I think in the future we have to have those medical facilities like all these dialysis clinics to have a registry so we can know who's on it, so they can know you need to be prepared, so it doesn't put us in a light of not being able to provide services if they need shelter. That's what I was finding out big time with that. And lastly, I look at the communication with this council. I've never been over to the EOC. I know it's located, but I never had a tour of it. Doesn't know how it really operates per se as being in there. As police officer, the other concept, but I think it's good to know, because to me, I feel that this council, for me, I'm shut out when you have emergencies here. Chief of Staff does a good job of giving you some limited information, but all my information I'm getting is what you're sending out to the public, and I'm putting what you're sending out to the public. When do we get briefed? When do we come in and be able to say, okay, that's the problem I have with this system here, that I'm not briefed of what's going on. I don't know what's going on, but people are constantly calling me because I'm the elected official, and I should know I should know answers. I think we got to do a better job of how we can be informed and be a part of the process to understand what's going on, to get the information to our constituents, because they're calling us first to find out what's going on. So those are my little tidbits to look in for your after action. If you can get back with me, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I really didn't want to, can I comment?
I'm sorry, Chief,
Okay.
go ahead.
So I was trying to keep it short and brief. I can go more in details when it comes to the sandbags, because we did realize that there were long lines and stuff. We did overcome, and I can let Ms. Nguyen give a little bit more detail about that if you care. But basically, we started bagging some of the bags up and started assisting some of the residents with the bags when they came through, so it wouldn't be much of a long line. We did have 3 sites, right, Ms. Nguyen? Yes. Okay. I can let her talk more about some of the changes that we did once we saw the lines being long.
So, Sarah Wynn, Administrative Neighborhood and Community Affairs. So as Chief Tripp mentioned, yes, when we did realize that we were challenged with long lines with the bags, we had staff to come in and start pre-bagging first thing in the morning. What you saw was that the bags were already given out by the time you got there. So that was to mitigate those long lines. As one of the additional things that we were doing is that we're looking for sites so that we can set up a 4th sandbagging site. We have to look at the ingress and egress of those sites. In a lot of our parks centers, we were challenged with that. So thank you so much for your comment of looking outside of the city, and we'll see what we can do to make that happen. We had staff right on the scene making those on-the-spot decisions in terms of, okay, do we need to reroute traffic, particularly over near McFarland Park, where we knew on the first day we had a game that evening. So we detoured and rerouted traffic so that there would not be a conflict with the visitors or participants going to the game. So we are looking at those after actions to identify additional sites now. We were dynamic on the spot in terms of trying to identify what are those things that we can do now to mitigate some of this traffic. So, yes,
I appreciate that.
you're welcome.
And to let you know about as far as TICO, we had TICO stage at multiple fire stations and also with the ERCs that was actually assisting with a lot of the power lines. Like I said, I just didn't go in detail, but TICO, as far as the contractor power line dies, they was cleared by 16:30. So of course they had to get that in order to get the power back up. Each one of the ERCs gave a detailed report, which I have that, and we will put in there after action that talks about TICO. The contractors worked with the push crews, assisted with cutting the trees and trying to get the power up as quick as possible. According to this, approximately 90 requests were submitted to TICO. This was in ERC 3, and 708 incidents of tree failures reported. They also had the field out, almost 400 ERC field events took place, and basically a lot of this was cleared up as much as possible. We have a TICO representative in the EOC as well. Gave us constantly update, let us know what powers were out, and of course the different grids and stuff as well. So
I appreciate you, but I think we need to find out what TICO's maintenance plan is, because like I said, a lot of the residents complaining that they couldn't get their power because these lines were through their trees or what have you. So, and people have called, even these tips, I can tell you a couple of streets that people called, I went out there and had them, it takes them forever because there's an issue. They'll say, well, I gotta wait, we gotta get another crew to cut the tree, whatever. I'm just saying, we need to find out what is their maintenance plan of these streets, or how can residents call in to say, I've got lines going through this tree, to find out to get those cut, because if you have a storm, it takes a while, because that power won't be up a while until they can get that done, because apparently the guy told me last night, because the wetness of the tree going through the line, some other issues, and that's what takes so long sometimes.
And that's one of the reasons why we put a lot of information out there about generators as well, you know. So I know some people can't afford it. That's why we offer the shelters for situations that take place like that. But I'll definitely make sure it's on the after action report.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilman Mascotte.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Goods mentioned almost everything that I wanted to talk about, so I appreciate it. Very, very good topics, especially about the sandbags. I know almost 100,000 bags were distributed, but people were saying, you know, why is there not another location and whatnot, and I know you're going to be addressing that. And I appreciate the council members that were out filling those sandbags, because several were out there, which is always very good. But most importantly, I wanted to say thank you. I know that, what was it, like 40 TPD officers were deployed to go down to Northport and Port Charlotte.
Yes.
My wife moved up from Northport last year, so I don't know what her neighborhood looks like, but my oldest stepdaughter lives down there with her father, and you know, they've been without power. They're fine, but there was not enough time for them to evacuate to come here, because as the storm was turning quickly, they're okay, but he has significant damage to his house. But you know, I just want to relay on their behalf, thank you for Tampa coming in and stepping up and going down there, because they've seen how helpful our people have been down to their community, and we appreciate it very much. Again, Councilman Goose, just to keep my comments brief, has mentioned everything regarding, you know, going to the EOC. I've never been there. Many of us have not been there. Just so we know, but also an appreciation to Chief Bennett. He was very quick with information, but we get inundated with questions. And as city council representatives, people reach out to us, especially with power loss. I would relay everything to Mr. Juice over at TICO by email for people that were without power for several days, and he was very, very responsive. So I know TICO's very good with that, but again, you know, this is a very complicated effort when we have such an unpredictable storm. But I appreciate so many people in this room that, you know, you and everybody else that work tirelessly, you know, on standby there to keep this community safe. Thank you.
Councilman Vieira.
Mr. Chair, and I, you know, echo the part on appreciation. I'll be honest, I mean, I was floored just watching what our City of Tampa workers did, you know, being out at the sandbag location, Miss Wynn's group, and so in Parks and Recreation. I was floored. I mean, that's really hard work. A lot of those folks, and I'm out of shape, okay, but I was out there for like 2.5 hours with my wife, and I was exhausted, and folks were out there for about 10 hours, right? And so I was floored, but just by all the departments, Parks and Recreation, obviously fire, police, et cetera, all of the public servants who are here, the city attorneys dealing with emergency orders. It was really just something to see, even just from a distance. You know, and the only things that I would say, and I'll make motions on this at the end, is number one, Councilman Goods mentioned a good point there with regards to the sandbags issues, you know, that we probably need more bodies there. And I think that's, and again, like, you can always look afterwards and go, hey, listen, we could do this better, et cetera. And thank God we ultimately didn't get the hurricane, or I shouldn't say thank goodness, we ultimately didn't get the hurricane for that. But, you know, I would like to see, there's so many volunteer groups in Tampa who could be amassed to help out at sandbag locations. I'm thinking of Rotary clubs. We just had someone here who was the past president of George Edgecombe Bar Association, many different groups. So I'm going to propose that we look at something like a Tampa Volunteer Corps, Tampa Corps, whatever you want to call it. I'll talk about that at the end for issues like this, not for things that are going to get us sued where somebody goes and puts themselves in danger, but for common things like sandbag locations, et cetera, where people want to help. People want to help, but they don't know, especially in a time like this. You know, when I went out there, I was looking at the storm that we're probably going to potentially get hit, but I was in a location that's very elevated, so I go, hey, listen, I want to help out my fellow Tampanos who are in different areas who are potentially going to get flooded, God bless them. And then the other issue, and I'll make a motion on this as well towards the end, is also shelters that are with animals. A lot of our constituents don't leave their homes if their dog or their cat don't come with them. So we ought, with the county, we obviously have to look at that issue. That's something that's very, very important, and you know 1,000 times better than I do. But working with our friends in the Humane Society and in different organizations to start 3 or 4 months before hurricane season, some sort of a public awareness campaign on you know, getting up to date with your shots, with your animals, et cetera, so that you can get them out to the shelters, et cetera. So I'll be talking about that at the end, but just again, the City of Tampa staff was really amazing, like really, really amazing. Everybody, just my hat is off. It was very inspiring to see, and we're very lucky as a city, including with having me. Thank you, ma'am.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you, Chief Tripp, and thank all the city employees and all the volunteers who did what they did to make us safe through this storm. However, I look at things in a different perspective. What if that hurricane wouldn't go that way and came this way? We wouldn't be talking about sandbags. We wouldn't be talking about generators. It would be underwater. The generators would be underwater. When you have a storm of that size that comes in, that moves the bay, and each gallon of water weighs about 8.33 pounds, and they take 1 trillion or some billions gallons of water out, what does that tell you if it came this way, and it would have come this way? Where we sit at today, we might have been underwater. And I'm so sorry for the people who took this. The disaster there is maybe, they say 40 or 50 billion, maybe more than that, 80, 100 billion. It's going to be unbelievable, and I feel so sorry for the people who lost everything, and some, including the family members' lives, and the heroics of the people who were out there picking them up and trying to save them, all of them, from the military, from the Coast Guard, from everyone who did the work. Firefighters, fire stations underwater, 6, 7 feet of water in them. It's a tragedy what's happened, and we learned by what happened. Now we have to apply what we learned into reality. Yes, there was backup where the sandbags were. Yes, I saw them on MacDill Avenue coming all the way north to Spruce, heading Spruce all the way almost to Himes. They were lined up. And I saw a lot of congestion there, but the people got along fine. They understood the emergency was there, and you can prepare, but some people, even when you tell them to evacuate, that you have to evacuate, do not leave. And that happened in this hurricane. And a lot of people lost their lives because of that. I'm not saying they all would have, but it's just, we have to understand that when you have an item like this, we're not practicing enough on this. You never practice for what's happening like this. But it's something that you're there to protect your belongings. But I think you better start talking about protecting your life, because when this happens, we don't realize how powerful this is, that it can devastate miles after miles and just leave it flat. Not a block or two, but miles and miles of it. And I feel so sorry for those people, and I wish we could do something to help them out. And I think we have to donate. I think there's a lot of TV stations give you their amount to send to them. It's a public need and necessity at this time to help our fellow citizens of the state of Florida. Thank you very much for what you and your department have done to make us as safe as possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Are you gonna make a motion?
I've got some information just came in from citizens. I want to make sure the chief has it. Apparently my agents brought me several citizens are calling in who are watching, are saying, why have we invested in possibly automatic sandbag machines? I don't know if they have that technology, but people are calling in saying, well, we should be investing in those type of materials to help out with the situation. I just want to put that out there, that citizens are watching, they're paying attention, and see 3 calls in this.
So actually, that is on our list. That's on our after action to get one automatic. And just to let you know, with volunteers too, we have our CERT program that we've been working. We have a lot of those volunteers out there to help as well, you know. And something else I didn't talk, and I'll let the rest of you finish, but law enforcement, Chief O'Connor had her personnel out there. All the evacuation went to their homes multiple times. And I think they did like over close to 100,000 people, residents, as far as telling them you're in the evacuation zone.
Councilman Carlson.
Thank you. To the points that were just mentioned, as soon as we saw that we were going to get hit in some way, I started getting emails and calls saying, are we going to have the slow sandbag distribution again this year? Are we going to have the machines? People said that they've been asking every time for several times to get the machines to sandbag, and people were very frustrated. I mean, you saw the news of the lines and everything. I want to say thank you to all the folks inside the city and out who worked hard and didn't sleep. I saw some of the pictures and it looked like people were tired. And, you know, thank you to everybody thank you, Nicole, for sleeping on a cot. So thanks to everybody. And the comments I have are not going to be directed to anybody who worked on that or to you, Chief. But I think we need to improve communication with the public. I represent South Tampa. Most of my district is in evacuation zone A. My house is in evacuation zone A. I found out about the evacuation by somebody contacting me from the county. And it was only 3 or 4 hours later that the city sent out anything about it. And sure, the city can only send things out when it's approved, but there was a lack of communication with the public and a lack of communication with council. I track social media accounts for several cities, and on the morning after the event, St. Petersburg started posting 8 or 9 in the morning what to do after the storm, how to clean up, when your trash is going to get. It was only about 3 or 4 hours later that Tampa started to push some things out, and it wasn't nearly enough. I started asking people for information so that we could inform the public. Through our own social media accounts, we have the ability to reach out to thousands of people in the public, but also we're getting calls and emails, and sure, we can direct them to a hotline, but they also expect us to know the answers to these things. Now that a hurricane, if you live in Florida, unfortunately is a reoccurring issue. We know the timeline of what happens in a hurricane. And so we should be able to take these communication assets and put them into a plan so that we say 48 hours before, here's the communication assets we send out. 10 hours before, 5 hours after the event, here's the assets we send out. Right now, the question people have, and I just looked at the social media account again, I can't see it if I missed it, I apologize, but there's the sanitation people were great at picking up garbage. They put a special day, they went through and communicated that, but the trash that's on the side of the road is still there throughout most of the neighborhoods I've been through, and people don't have any idea when it's going to get picked up. And there needs to be better communication about that. They know what to do with it because there was some communication on that, although that was a little bit slow, but they don't know when it's going to get picked up. And it's providing a hazard because cars are almost hitting each other driving through neighborhoods. Pedestrians are trying to navigate it. The other thing that I would say is that a crisis like this, especially the fact that we might have had a Katrina or something in Tampa. Maybe what happened in Fort Myers could have happened in Tampa. And in my district, it's an opportunity for us to set politics aside. It shouldn't be a time when we have political issues. What I felt like, and it sounds like some of my colleagues felt like, the city council set aside. We were provided almost no information. If the president and the governor, who don't like each other, can get together and have communication, how come it's my district that would have been the hardest hit? I didn't get a single phone call from anyone. I got 2 or 3 texts from the chief of staff with very little information. I got the daily updates. Besides that, I've never been in an emergency management facility either. Never been invited. I don't care about going there, but we need better communication because we are half the government. Just because we go into emergency order, I'm not directing this at you, I'm just looking that way. But we have to have a protocol that just because we're in an emergency situation doesn't mean that city council doesn't exist. We still are half the government of the city, and we need to be able to work on these issues. I think we need a communication plan. If we can do videos of the mayor and her dog on Bay Shore, we can communicate with city council. I would like, it's a completely fair situation. I didn't get a single phone call from anybody. You were invited to the emergency management center. None of the rest of us were.
Let me correct you on that one. I was not invited. I made the effort to call. I made the effort to pick up the phone and call. I wanted to be in the middle of everything. No, I wasn't invited.
What the administration does is they choose their favorites and they ignore everybody else and they turn a hurricane into a political situation.
Your 5 minutes is up.
I would like to.
Councilwoman Hurtak, you are recognized.
I think that all of my colleagues have made incredible points, and so I'm not going to reiterate the points except to say thank you for those of you who were there and for all of our first responders who did an amazing job from everything that I could see. Communication could be better, but what I'm interested in most is I know that your teams are getting together and all of you are talking about what we're talking about, what didn't work, what needs to be improved. So what I would love to see is when you have that information, maybe a presentation to council on the things that you all recognize and what has been mentioned today and how we see we're going to improve that. That's what I would love. The other thing I know that we'll probably get, but obviously not anytime soon, I really want the data of what it looks like when it hit Fort Myers, because it's incredible. That area is very similar. We have the bay, we have the rivers going up. What did the flood look like? Like, where did it actually hit, the heights, and how deep did it go in? When you see pictures on media, it's always the coast. It's always like the most damage that they can show. And I know some of that is sensationalized, but also just to show what absolutely havoc people who live on the coast. But majority of our citizens don't live on the coast, exactly. So what did the storm, what did the flooding look like there, and how can we use it here to help figure out what that kind of storm would have looked like here? I know we have the technology to do that, so that's what I would love to see in the next, however much time we can do it. And I'm sure that folks are already talking about it, but I would love a presentation to the council on just how we can take what unfortunately happened in the Fort Myers area and what we can learn from that to make our response better as we go. And I think it's a great idea if all of us got a tour of the area of the emergency management center, just so we know what it looks like and what we could do in the future and how we can maybe like a quick way that all of us can get information so we can send it out, because we did get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. All that was social media was huge. I just retweeted and re-shared everything the city put out. That's all I could do. But what else could we do? And I didn't want to bother people at the time, so information like that I think would be wonderfully helpful. So thank you again for everything you've done. And I know you're already doing this. I know you're already thinking, how can we improve? But if we could know that too, that would be really wonderful. Thank you.
So I'm going to send an invite to all of y'all, and I'm going to personally escort you over to the EOC, okay? So you can see it. So just a couple of things. I just want to try before Chair comment. So when we talk about information getting out, you know, honestly, we started like 2 weeks in advance. Now, I know people will call and people will send texts and say, I didn't know about this. I don't know what else we can do. And like I said, when it comes to evacuation, we can't force no one to leave. You know, we have been knocking on doors, and I know for sure that we had media coverage from Sunday all the way till Thursday. I mean, twice a day, informing the community, begging and pleading individuals to please, please, please leave. Now, I know there are lessons learned that we can learn from this, and the devastation down there, we probably will never know exactly the full details. We can then go by pictures and stuff, you know, but the biggest thing is that I believe the communication has been good to the community. We can do more, and as far as communication with you guys, as long as I'm here, I guarantee you'll be getting an email or phone call from me moving forward. Hopefully we don't have any more, but just to let you know.
Mr. Shelby, please make it quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The invitations, will they be individual or will they be as a group?
However you wanted me to send it.
Well, it's up to you however you do it, but just please know that if it is a group, then it's going to be we have to work within the sunshine law confines, and the fact is it may be a space, the kind of space that you may not want to necessarily have the public there. So we'll have to talk about that.
I'll
But
take that in note.
what I'm asking you, though, is to include me in the process, just so that I'm able to make sure everything is done according to.
Yes, sir.
Thank
I sure will.
you, Chief.
Any other comments or questions? Chief, thank you. Thank you to fire. Thank you to police that had to work 12 hours on, 12 hours off. Thank you to every department head that could have been with their families and instead were down at the EOC. Thank you for Parks and Recreation for helping our citizens. The sand that was brought in for the sandbag still had beach grass in it. We couldn't fill up those bags fast enough. I want to thank the people who were out there volunteering, the common citizens who rolled up their sleeves and helped fill those sandbags. I want to thank people who took water and food to their neighbors because their electricity was out. I want to thank everybody in this city who helped everybody else out. And thank you to our family, the city employees that were there for the citizens of Tampa. Thank you, Chief.
Okay. And thank you all.
At this time, we will take public comment. If you're wishing to speak, please form a line on my left, your right.
Mentesna, Tampa, Florida. One of the things I like to say, I never like to personalize anything, but I want to say growing up, my father was an obnoxious pig. My father was an obnoxious pig. Why is that? Because although he had a schedule, we had a schedule of when we can have sexual relationships with our mother, he used to break the schedule. That's what obnoxious people do. So although it's a schedule here for when the public can speak, somebody breaks the schedule. And nobody have the courage to stand up and challenge them. But my father never respected us because he was an obnoxious pig. And somebody don't respect the people. And it's people getting up and walking out because they've sat here since 9 o'clock this morning because somebody is in the obnoxious pig category. And they have no respect for the people, for the citizens who paying for parking, who getting parking tickets to come down here and say what they got to say. And clowns talking about sandbags. I don't care about no sandbags, and we don't care about the hurricane. White people have made a profitable business talking about who went where and who went where. All those white folks getting paid, major paid. You heard what the person say, 15% of the breast cancer awareness thing goes to research, the other 85% Nobody know where it goes. White folks getting paid. Don't nobody care about that. What we care about in this city, what we care about as African people, and what we have to care about, and the only thing we care about is reparations. That's the only thing we care about. We've had Perry Harvey, we've had Gwen Miller, we've had Kevin White, Reverend Thomas Scott, Frank Reddick, now we got Orlando Goulds, and not one word of these black clowns, these black fools have ever mentioned the word reparations. They talk about parks, they talk about recreation, they talk about say no to drugs, say no to gun violence. But white folks owe us for 400 years of free labor, and we're going to stop calling it free labor because it's not free and we want to get paid for it. We want to get paid for it. Obnoxious, scary, cowards, do what they want to do. No respect for the people, and absolutely positively no respect for African people. None. African people in this city, we're 26% of the population. They trying to depopulate us, giving us vouchers to go and live in places black people ain't never seen. Doing all kind of ignorant stuff to African people and want us to accept it. No, we don't care about your hurricane or your sandbag.
Mr. Chairman.
No. Let's go with public comment, please, and thank
No, I want Mr. Shelby to read the rules because certain council members did talk about that. So please read the rules. Because I don't want the public to think that we just when the chairman's the chairman, he sets the pace of the council. But I'll make sure that some councilmen did ask in reference to public comment. But I want you to explain.
And it was heard. That was an agenda item that the chief of staff wanted to bring on during ceremonial presentation. And I agree with him.
So, Mr. Shelby?
And we already heard how obnoxious I am. So that is fine, Councilman Goose.
I don't care about
Let's
that.
proceed.
I just want the public to know that there is a schedule, but you, as a chairman,
the longer we talk about this, the more time we're wasting for the public.
And also,
let's proceed.
And also, Mr. Chairman, also, Mr. Daniels, I can recall back in 2019 when you brought up reparations. I remember I had my aide at that time come out and bring the Webster Dictionary and spoke about reparations. So reparations has been spoken about, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Boy, it's sure hard to follow that. My name's Ken Wise.
Yes, please, give us your name.
I live over in Seminole Heights.
What was the name, sir? I'm sorry.
Ken Wise.
Thank you, sir.
And you had the person talking about how the hurricane went and all that, and there was a lot on sandbags. He even mentioned it. And my issue is trees. I like trees. Trees are good. We have a lot of them. You have a tree hugging department, and you have a head tree hugger that's an arborist. And if the trees that we have that make up the canopy in this town were being run by a private company to harvest the lumber, all the trees have long passed their harvest date. We dodged a bullet on this one. We dodged a bullet 5 years ago. We might not be that lucky the next time. If we get a hurricane come right up Tampa with 150 mile per hour sustained winds, it's going to look like a tornado went through an Idaho cornfield. You are going to have all these trees going over houses, power lines. It'll be like Puerto Rico being out for months without power and all the houses. People aren't going to be worried about water coming underneath the door jamb when their whole house has just been taken out by a tree that you won't let them cut down. I suggest what you do is you get with the tree hugging department and you say, hey, these are all water oaks that are way past their due date. Water oaks only good for about 700 years. It's long past that. Say, we got to do what we can to encourage people not to keep the trees up, but to cut them down. You can always plant new trees, but we're lucky the next hurricane comes through. If it comes through and goes right through Tampa, it will destroy this city. That's it.
Thank you.
Amen.
Hi, my name's Dave Coleman, and topics on traffic and hurricanes, ecocide, and climate change are all my thing, but that's not what I came here to talk about. But I have to thank you for saying preparation. Disaster resilience is one thing after the fact, but preparation, what you were asking for, is something certainly the city needs to do. Those coal ash piles and mosaic gypsum stacks, if they collapsed with a 15-foot surge, it would have inundated Progress Village. It would have been absolutely freaking horrible. What I came to talk about, I don't think anybody's organizing around the Cahoots program that I would like to see, but it's a social ride-along, the social worker ride-along program that is up for discussion, I believe, today. Is that right? Yes. So it seems to be being cut in half. I wrote a thing, but I'm just going to talk about it. I've been attending, as well as some of you have, the Stop Gun Violence listening sessions that were started by Chief Delgado and then were continued by Mary O'Connor. At her first one, she announced that that the increased gun violence in Tampa was due to trauma, the trauma of 2 years of COVID and 2 years of civil unrest. I don't know what that sentence means, but that's exactly what she said. But obviously, those would be social issues, not a litigating and police issue. The Cahoots program that was begun in Eugene is a format that already exists. I asked at that meeting that Chief O'Connor came to at her first meeting, I said, is there anything like a Cahoots thing going on? Because I wasn't even aware, but apparently it had been going on for 6 months. And she deferred to an assistant chief, and he deferred to an officer who praised the program and said, yes, it's working, and I've seen some really good results. He gave some anecdotes in the community. It seems that it is working, but subsequently at another gun violence event, I asked, so how is it going? And he said, we're not doing much. We're designing our own program. We're not copying what they're doing in St. Pete. We're certainly not copying what they did in Eugene, which actually saves police departments hundreds of thousands of dollars, and obviously lives also. My whole idea is that, a reason for being here is that, you know, social justice and the things that we need to do is, here's the thing, O'Connor keeps asking for the community to trust her, to trust the police department. If we see something, say something. Well, she needs not to demand trust from us, but maybe turn it around and show us something. What about, one thing has been suggested, to give the Civilian Review Board a lawyer. One thing would be not take away half the money of this Cahoots program, but increase the money for the Cahoots program. Double it. Get social workers out there. This is a beginning, having social workers ride with police officers. We, in my community, would like to see social workers go out on their own, as the Cahoots program was. If you do a little research and understand what it's about,
Thank you, Mr.
we need not to litigate against social and mental health problems.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. We all have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Frank Trainer. I'm a current resident of West Tampa, and I come from a long line of West Tampa natives all the way through my great-grandparents. I'm one of those guys that's very proud of the culture and the character and the traditions of West Tampa. One of those long-time traditions has been threatened, and I'm just trying to figure out why and why now. This past Sunday before the Chiefs game, now I live by the stadium. This past Sunday before the Chiefs game, representatives from the parking division were going throughout all the streets, and they were giving out these pre-printed warnings for parking in the city right away. And I was told that 4 cars in my yard, in my house, wouldn't be able to park there. And even though they're clearly in my driveway, 4 feet from the street, clearly, and they're not even in the street. And I was told to imagine that there was a sidewalk there. But there's no sidewalks. There's no sidewalks anywhere near. If there was sidewalks, it'd be a different story. I'd be okay. I'd abide. No problem. And so would a lot of the other residents. I'd like to reference an article in the Tampa Bay Times from 2021. It's called My West Tampa Yard is Your Parking Space. And in this article, she says, and for as long as there have been Bucks and a stadium for them to play in, West Tampa has been a part of a grassroots entrepreneurial enterprise blessed long ago by city officials. Homes in West Tampa near Raymond James have long and legally sold parking spaces for Buccaneers games. I've lived on Eileen Street for the last 7 years, and I've enjoyed this parking tradition with my neighbors. Most of them have been here since the beginning, since the 60s. They've been here since the Bucks have been here as well. They live for this. They live for this. They put their vest on, they make their signs that are terrible, but they're amazing at the same time. And they go out there, they take turns waving cards in, and they make their money. They use it for buying Christmas gifts, giving money to their grandkids, medicine, whatever. But it's a nice chunk of change that they're going to lose because of this policy. And again, we've been doing this for a long time with no problems. And let's also not forget the sacrifices that these residents make by living across from the stadium with trash and all that stuff. Again, we've had Super Bowls, we've had big events, never have had any problems. This is a local tradition that adds to the character of West Tampa, and it adds to the game day experience. Walking to the game, I have my friends over, so now I have to tell four cars to park somewhere else. And when we're done at my house, we walk to the game, we go down the sidewalk, and we see other friends that we know along the way, because that's what West Tampa is about. And those friends have probably been in that same spot for years and years, in that same spot tailgating. So I'm asking you, just please consider this. Why are we doing this now? We've never had problems. We can go elsewhere and see that this is happening all over the city. Please let us do what we've been doing. If you build us sidewalks, it'll be a different story. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for saying the facts. Let me go back, and I'm not trying to go back a million years, but I'm going to go back to the Dick Record administration again.
Sure.
When all this started, they didn't allow anybody to park on your house, on your land. And we looked at it 25 years ago.
Sure.
And at that time, we said, what happens? These are the people that when there's an event, it doesn't have to be a football game. When there's an event, no matter if it's a concert or monster roller, whatever hell you want to call them, all that stuff is there. So we came up that you could park in your land. Park on your land. What's happening now, they're saying that the right-of-way part of the city, not the street, but the right-of-way, which is usually the pole on your, and this is again a theory.
Sure.
The pole, electric pole company, that part between that pole and the street belongs to the city. But they don't tell you the other side. The city never cleans that. You guys clean that. So we made to an agreement with the neighborhoods. And I've been on this now for 2 days. People are calling me, and I went to see some people yesterday at Braddock, 3306, 3305, and talked to them at length. And I have a copy of that, but I left it at the house, so I need a copy of that so I can take it to the administration.
Violation? You can have mine.
I need a copy of that.
Okay.
And what it is, I don't know who sent them out there, but they're dead wrong. What they do not allow you to do is park on the street, because the streets are so narrow that then a fire truck or an ambulance cannot get by. That
Now-
I understand.
now,
But on the right-of-way, for those period of time, because all of you that live there, including myself, are deprived of using your own city streets,
Sure.
your own operation, you're a discomfort, because when I come in from Osmar, from November to May, guess what? I can't go home. I can't turn on Cargo Road. I can't turn on Himes, because they don't let me make a left-hand turn on Himes and MLK. I gotta go back to Del Mabry, I gotta go all the way to Spruce, go all the way around, come back there to get to my house. Or I gotta go all the way to Armenia, come around to get, you have been taking care of that for a long time, all the right of way, and now they don't want you to use it. That was done to eliminate the stress that the people are, because every time there's an event of some sort that draws thousands of people, you're the ones that are discriminated across because you can't get to your own house. That's why we did that. And I'm sure Greco would come here and tell us that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know who gave that order.
They were
but
giving them
I
to
promise
everybody.
you, I'm gonna find out. They didn't do it on their own.
He told me that it would have to be another 15 feet in.
Yeah, that's the right of way. So what I'm trying to tell you, I don't know who the Einstein was that did that,
Yeah.
but he's got a brain about the size of an ant.
Yeah, I heard it was a non-resident too that complained. Quickly, there was one issue last year, of all the time I've been on the block, there was one issue where a car was parked in the street, and we never see that. I called the city because that one car was impeding walking traffic in the street, and they said they couldn't do nothing about it.
And this is an uproar that started over nothing. It's
Okay.
been like that for 25 years. And all of a sudden, they want to do that. Yet they don't go after the illegal houses that have been pouring in.
Yeah.
You got 4 apartments in them. You can't get in your house because
Yeah.
of that. But they don't go after those. They go after the little guy who they can pick on.
Yeah, well, I'm here for all the older residents too, because they couldn't be here. Thank you.
Get the copies, I want copies of that from the council. Go make some copies.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Maniscalco.
And just to follow up with what Councilmember Miranda said, I first heard about this through Mr. Novo, who's going to be coming up to speak. Thank you very much. And what I heard was that the individual that was going out, issuing the warning several weeks ago, said, "Oh no, this is your city councilman that did this." I didn't do this, and I do pay attention. I know we didn't do anything up here. Gentleman's name was Edgar, I come to find out. So I did talk to Vic up in parking, and it was, what he said was this was a departmental decision. It didn't come before council. We didn't make this decision to change anything, so they took it upon themselves after receiving some complaints. But Councilman Miranda's been in that neighborhood 60 years. You know, nobody knows it better than him. You know, people are just trying to earn a little extra money on their property, as he said, on parcels that are used during games and events. It's not a daily occurrence that the people are taking care of. It's not the city that's coming out and mowing the rights of way and whatnot. People are taking care of that, and they're earning a little bit of money on Saturdays or Sundays, whenever the games are out, whatever the event is, and that's it. It is a West Tampa tradition, in my opinion. As far as I know, it's always been like that on those few days. So it wasn't a city council decision. I called for clarity, but we've been getting inundated with phone calls based on this, because people are losing 4, 5, 6 cars, $10 a car, $20. I don't know what the price is. It's a lot of money, and it adds up. So I know Councilman Goods had asked for a copy of that citation, and Miranda as well. So we'll certainly take a look at this, because I don't think it's right. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Omar Garcia. I live on 1041 Royal Pass, and I just wanted to let you know of a situation that happened to us during the disaster recovery. I happen to own a box truck, and we really started recovery efforts on Thursday. And I told my guys, let's make sure we're in line early at McKay Bay on Friday at 6 o'clock as soon as they open up, so we can go back and make a couple runs that day. We found out that the McKay Bay weigh scale location was actually closed until Monday. Normally they have operation hours on Friday and Saturday, and they didn't reopen again until Monday. Obviously our truck was full, so we couldn't continue with our post recovery efforts. So I just wanted to, and I know that staff and city staff is pretty taxed in terms of personnel during these times, but when we do close McKay Bay on a post event like this, it does slow down recovery efforts, and that's something that should just be considered to keep the dump open regular hours, if not even extended hours during those times, just to speed things up. That's all I had to say.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Sir, I do believe, and someone from staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but they shut down McKay Bay because it is run by, I don't know, some type of energy. It's a waste energy plant. So I know they shut down, and I know those turbines or engines take time to start up again. So I know part of it was that, but that is a good point. I don't think anyone here can speak on that, but I'm making a note of that. We'll talk about that when we're looking at disaster. So thank you. But I just wanted to let you know that I think that was part of the reason.
Yeah, they didn't give us any kind of explanation, and I know that there was trucks, backed up for quite a bit, and so
Thank you.
It slowed us down. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Good morning, Council. My name is Manuel Novo, longtime resident of 3414 West Leroy Street. Born and raised there parking cars my whole life. So now we're part of selective enforcement. So I got a couple pictures. Can I put some pictures up for you? Everybody knows Arcoides, right down here. We have parking every single day on sidewalks and easements. No tickets. They let them do it every single day. Here's another picture of Arcoides. Same thing. Selective parking. The worst, West Tampa Sandwich Shop. Another one. I can't see when I come out of Douglas Street to make a right. I cannot see who's coming from the left. Every car is parked on the easement. And all this is brought up on our neighborhood association meetings for the last 4 to 5 years. We speak with code enforcement and we've spoken with the parking department. Nothing ever happens. I got another picture here. Glen Avenue. Hey, let's use that sidewalk. Let's dump our trash, use that sidewalk to park our cars. St. Conrad. Sorry, I'll turn it around for you all. St. Conrad, I got another picture. St. Conrad between Glen and Lincoln. My family lives there. My daughter cannot ride on the sidewalk safely because every single day we have cars parked on the easement. So it's okay to ticket me, my personal vehicle now on a game day when I'm parked in the driveway. My personal vehicle gets ticketed. And like Councilman Guido Maniscalco said, when I was there the other day, they told me it was our councilman that was behind all this. Not telling who the complaint person was, but they said it was councilman behind
You
this.
have a name of that person?
Edgar. And I've actually called the parking divisions, I've called all of them, and they say they're gonna keep doing it and they're gonna be out there on Sunday, and they've already given out tickets, they've already begun all that. Here's a picture with no cars. So we're allowed to have this business use that whole sidewalk for your vehicles. No parking signs. We're all parked behind the no parking signs. Behind that car, no tickets every single day. Now here's a picture of the homes. I called parking division, they told me, park my car behind the mailbox, you're okay. All right, and then they told me park behind the no parking signs, you're okay. I got answers from everybody different. Now they're telling us we need to keep our cars behind this line here, no cars in any of this grass that we maintain, take care of. It's unreal, it's unreal. Literally, my personal vehicle, got a warning on my personal vehicle in my driveway. I parked 3 cars, this doesn't affect me. I'm more worried about my neighbor's next door. She's 90 years old, she uses this to fix her car, fix her house. It's not for me, it's for them. That's it, that's all I got. So, I got 20 seconds left now. All right, well, thank you, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Do you guys want these photos? You like all this right here?
This is, I can't ignore.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Albert Pacheco. I've lived in Tampa, Florida since 1969. I'm a graduate of Plant High School. And all I wanted to say is talk about the parking issue during Raymond James Stadium events. We do a service to the city of Tampa by parking these cars in our, in our houses. We alleviate traffic. We help the Tampa Police Department. We keep our eyes open for anything that's going on, during these events. And as these gentlemen were talking about the parking situation, they say that we are going to be cited if we park cars in the parking, the city, whatever they call that area, 15 feet from the street. I just wanted to know, and just let you know, I don't know anymore. I mean, they had this sign that says we're not supposed to park there anymore, and I wanted to see if that was correct, because that's eliminating 5 car spaces. Talking about car spaces, there are over 200 houses that provide parking for this stadium event, and that's over 1,000 cars. So you can imagine the traffic of people looking for parking, and that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Councilman Vieira.
Thank you. And this may be out of line, I'm sorry. Are you related to Felipe Pacheco?
Pacheco, yes, Albert Pacheco.
But Felipe, did you know what Felipe?
No, but I'm a distant cousin of Freddie Pacheco.
Freddie Pacheco.
Disregard. Okay, disregard. I knew a.
Yeah. Sure, just a second, just a second, Chairman. So then you remember La Botica de Pacheco?
I don't know, but I've been to Ybor City a lot.
Yeah, it was on Columbus Drive in 16th, I believe it was.
Oh, okay.
That was where Freddie got his learning how to become a pharmacist and became a doctor and a fight doctor.
Yes, Muhammad
and so
Ali's
forth.
fight
Yeah.
doctor.
Thank you,
yes.
but to what you're saying about, I just don't know how this happened. I got a name, but I just can't understand what's called CS, common sense. Some people or some government have lost it, and I'm not saying this one has, but I'm sure that the administration themselves didn't order this. This was done to compensate what's happening, what you guys have lost, that your anxiety level, and it's not only the games of sports, all sporting events that are there, you have the ability to park, and it's really not about the money. It's to compensate for the loss of you guys getting in and out of your house that you can't make. If you can't get out of your house and go west to Himes and make no turn. None. You can't do that. You can't even on MacDill. They're so backed up, and then they close Tampa Bay Boulevard 6 hours before the game. So how are you going to get home? Park your car and walk?
We have to go around, and we try to keep the
That's
roads as clear as possible.
Right. So what they did, the Greco administration, the city council at that time, said park on your street as long as you don't park no cars on the pavement where an ambulance or a fire truck that needs to be there for emergency can pass. And that's what we did, and it's been working beautifully. Instead, Einstein came in and did whatever they did. I don't know who that Einstein is, but he certainly didn't help the cause. You cannot look at it in a money-making thing. It's an even thing for what you fellas have lost in getting in and out of your time. You don't have a normal life when there's an event at the stadium. And the people tell me about parking problems in the city, I tell them all the time, go to West Tampa doing an event, I'll show you a parking problem. You can't get nowhere. They don't let you out. You're captured in your own neighborhood. You're in jail for a certain amount of hours. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, council members. I'm Brian Rosello, and I'm representing the neighborhoods south of Columbus Drive and 1 block east of Himes, and it's about this parking issue that's going on through the games. Us residents, we've been parking for over 2 decades. We do park on the right of way. We don't let a bunch of bad apples who park partially in the street ruin this for us. We keep it 3.5 foot off the street. A lot of, let me see here, people have been doing it correctly. We clean up the trash as well as maintain the trees and cut the grass on the right of way. A lot of people don't have front yards. We have fenced-in front yards and fenced-in backyards to prevent theft, excuse me. And the residents park themselves in the right-of-way in front of their own homes every night, every day, even during events. We also have visitors that come, and we also do park for the events to make extra money. Part of it, pay homeowners insurance and ever-increasing the property taxes they pay. I've heard from elderly people, they pay their property taxes with it, and partially paying their ever-increasing homeowners insurance. Elderly citizens I've had tell me about this are really concerned, especially with as bad as the economy is. The warnings and violations went out last week. For the first time ever, I've been personally parking for this is my 23rd year parking, 3rd generation Tampanian. My grandparents used to tell me how Dale Mabry was a one-way road coming and going, dirt road. That's how long our family's been here. All that I ask, and all the people that ask, is that this coming weekend, to please pull down on the enforcement, because it is a tradition, and a lot of people on fixed incomes do depend on this money, and they do the right thing. 98% of all these people that are parking park legal. Why? Because they've been doing it for years and they want the tradition to keep going. And you have a few bad apples that do park on the street, half in the street, not on the right of way. The right of way should be able to be parked on as long as you're 3.5 feet off the street, pulling off in the right direction of traffic, away from a stop sign, away from a telephone pole. These are the rules that were taught to me by a traffic zoning enforcement officer about 8 years ago. And we just asked that this weekend to please hold back and don't issue. Game goers and homeowners don't need to be going through this. If you see somebody parked in the middle of the street and not properly on the right way and they're sticking down the street, you know what, give them a ticket. There's no problem with that because you're blocking, you know, if you're on the side, if your wheels are on the side of the street, yeah, you're in violation. But if you're in the right of way parked right or on your own personal property, I appreciate your time, I really do. Okay, council members?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman
And
Randall.
another thing we did, and it wasn't this administration, used to have the ditches in front of West Tampa that were used. And guess who used to clean them? The same neighbors cleaned them. We got so smart that we made them into V's. And now if you can't get in and clean it. You can't get in, you can't get out. So now the city's got to clean them, and they're not doing a very good job of it. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time, council members.
Good morning, council. My name is Stephanie Pointer. I'm a resident of South Tampa. I live in evacuation zone A. I have 4 more houses in evacuation zone A. So we're really a special bunch. But I wanted to point out, and I had no intention of talking about this, but I wanted to point out that this is one of my friends. Her and her husband are both disabled. They were standing at the Himes complex at 5:30 in the morning with about 50 other people. And I did contact somebody in administration, and they did respond, and they opened it up early. But there is a lot to be considered in a situation where we have this many people standing out to get sandbags in one of the hottest places in the country. If they are there at 5:30 in the morning, they're not standing out in the baking sun. They are not able to, the longer they stand there in line, the less they can do to secure their homes. So if those lines are able to be moving 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, when the sun comes up, then they can be boarding up their homes. They can be doing the things that they need to do outside. As somebody said over the last couple of days, if you can pick it up, put it up. And those people were standing in line instead of putting things up in their yards. So I just wanted to show you that I did point out, like I said, I contacted administration. They helped her get her car, her sandbags loaded and get her in her car within about 30 minutes after that. And I really do appreciate that. But a 9 o'clock start time is great for city council, but it's really not when you're in a state of emergency. So I don't know how that works, and I do appreciate our city staff. I will be the first one. I went out and tipped my garbage man because he showed up the day before the hurricane. We had a lot of concerned neighbors that we weren't going to have garbage pickup, and that guy busted through my neighborhood. He did an excellent job, and they came back through on Friday and took stuff. So I'm very, very happy. But sometimes in this after action review, we need to look at things like do we really need to wait until 9 o'clock to open the doors? This isn't buying a Nintendo Switch. Thank you. Oh, and I have to say that I love my tree hugger friend, and she's going to talk to you about trees.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caroline Bennett, lifelong resident of South Tampa. I will, since Stephanie said, I will talk about the trees a little bit. I want to say I was glued to the TV every waking hour leading up to Ian, and one of the things that the people said was that the bay is now averaging 3 degrees warmer than it used to. And their exact words were, "This is jet fuel to hurricanes." So the rise in temperature has a lot to do with the severity of the storms. And if you look on the internet all over the world, one of the biggest, best solutions is trees. We have to have the trees. They have a huge impact in a lot of ways. They save the city so much money. One thing that's a problem is people can't go out in their front yard and say, okay, what would happen if that tree wasn't there? And they can't do that. So a lot of times they don't visualize how a tree helps them. If the tree prevents flooding, which they do, They can't see the flooding that was prevented. They can't see the extra oxygen. They can't see what it's done to the urban heat island effect. One of the problems with TECO does need to trim the trees that are around power lines, no issue with that. The problem is some of the people they hire to do it butcher the trees to where the tree's gonna die, and that gets a lot of the complaints because it's not being done properly and it's not being done enough. So I agree with that, but we must have the trees. You know, they're a big part of the solution to the problem. I consider myself an expert. My family has been in the tree business for generations. And I'm sorry, these little mitigation trees, I know, you know, on our land, when we cut 100 to 150 trees on an acre, we're now going to have flooding on that land. Even though we're planting back 600 trees per acre, we're still going to have flooding on that land for years that we didn't have prior, because those 600 baby trees do not do the same work as 100 mature trees. And you know, if you want the details, I can tell you, but I am an expert on that. The other thing I want to mention real quick is talking about the evacuation. I think a lot of things the city did was great. I was very happy to see that. I'm a little concerned. It seemed like a lot of people didn't evacuate. I know my personal experience with my neighbors. I live in B. We were under a mandatory evacuation. Mea culpa, I didn't evacuate. But I did it based on a lot of information. We were ready to evacuate, but I saw that the water was going out of the bay. I had a place to go that wasn't nearby. It was a very informed decision. But a lot of people who evacuated for Irma said never again. And that's an issue. People need to understand how hard it is to evacuate, how much money it costs them in hotels, how hard it is to find a place. And this all figures into the evacuation. Dale Mabry was an absolute parking lot when they mandated McDill evacuate. Most of South Tampa is in A and B, and there's no other area of the city that has as many people and homes in A and B as South Tampa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Wilson, and I'm here to request to vacate an alley next to my home. I live at 2903 East 17th Avenue.
That, ma'am, that is coming up on our agenda. That's an agenda item.
Yes. Okay, so I need to sit down until it comes.
Number 99.
Do I need to have a seat until that comes up?
Well,
okay.
So it's going to be late in the afternoon.
Ma'am, it's going to be completely the afternoon. Just make a general comment, a public comment, unless of course, pardon. Oh, you are an applicant?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, yes, ma'am, you're gonna have to wait until that
Okay.
item is called.
Thank you.
I just didn't want her to have to stay here all day long if she was just going to make a comment.
Hey, good morning, Council. Robin Lockett. So we can't talk about agenda items, make comments about agenda items now?
Oh, yes, you can. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Robin Lockett. First, I just want to make a comment. A lot of conversation about trees, parking, and so forth. The city doesn't have anything more to do in regards to telling people who can park on their property and so forth. That's amazing to me. Doesn't make sense. For agenda item number 68, I would really like to know in regards to that item, how many tenants have been serviced, what the outcomes were, and also how many tenants were applied for it. That's one thing. I've been getting a lot of phone calls in regards to people that are living in hotels and the information around the Tenant Bill of Rights. Tenant Bill of Rights, in regards to the enforcement of it, when a landlord says that they are not accepting Section 8, they are not accepting vouchers, there's supposed to be a penalty for them to do that. For one, I guess evidently landlords don't know that this is in place. Two, when I looked up the enforcement, it's $75, $150, $300, and $450. Too low, right? Because I would pay, if I'm a landlord and I don't want to accept those things, the penalty, I would pay that amount to keep people out. And what happens, what's the process if it happens again? Or if it happens again? So if you have 10 applicants come and they consistently deny. So that's two things. I'm sorry. I think that was it. Hotels. A lot of people can't afford to, they're living in hotels and they can't afford to get an apartment or rent. So in regards to assistance around those individuals, what's going on? I had a couple people to contact me because they need help with paying the hotel bill because they can't find anywhere to live. So is the R3 program or the RMAP program, would they be able to get assistance with that? Thank you.
Ms. Lockett, I just wanted to let you know that the number 68 is we are simply approving the pilot project to begin. It hasn't even started yet. So that is what we're approving. So just, but I know that Ms. Travis will talk to you about the other, but I wanted to let you know that this is us just approving the fact that it's going to start.
So I would really want to know just the real outcomes of that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're on it.
You already asked that question.
Yeah, so, good morning, Nicole Travis, Administrator of Development and Economic Opportunity. We'll be providing you quarterly updates for our housing stuff, and we'll be happy to include, we would be reporting on that stuff anyway, so the questions that Ms. Lockett was just asking, we'll make sure that that's included in our quarterly reporting. Oh, and then for the hotel, for the R3, it's the recovery response. Keon is going to text me because I'm messing it up, but the R3 program, that does provide for hotel vouchers for people that are experiencing homelessness until we can find them permanent housing. But if they're in a hotel and still haven't found permanent housing, you need to call our office to connect them with the R3 program.
So is it still like they have to do like a lottery service call on a Monday or something and try to get in?
Yes, the calls are Wednesday and Thursdays and we take 500 applications a week.
Okay. Thank you.
Email me. Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak to public comment in chambers? Do we have anybody online? Strohmeyer, are you there? I'm sorry?
Ms. Strohmeyer, if you could hear me, please unmute yourself. I know she was having some internet issues. Chess did register, but she never logged on, so that will conclude public comment.
It is a party. Well, all right, let's move forward then. Mr. O'Hara, let's bring up agenda item number 51, which has been pulled for discussion. I don't care when you do it. Set it as soon as you possibly can. Mr. O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Council. Dennis Ruggiero, Chief Financial Officer. I have a very brief presentation on item number 51. To recap, this item moves funding from various funds to a Hurricane Ian FEMA reimbursement account so we can pay estimated expenses over $7 million associated with this storm. For clarification, we don't have anything to pay outside of the city organization yet. The event was only a week ago, and we await invoices. We're concentrating now on paying thousands of city employees, as you've heard, who worked around the clock to to prepare and respond to this emergency. During individual briefings, council has asked for some detail that we've discussed earlier as to what those anticipated expenses will be, and I have that here. If I could have the Elmo up, please. There you are. This information is taken directly from our preliminary damage update, which we provide daily to the county as a requirement for FEMA reimbursement. You'll see the expenses are primarily first personnel, debris removal, and preparations. And I'll just go down the list briefly. Salary and benefits. That is the overwhelming majority of the expense, as you would probably guess. That is what runs our organization. Debris removal. Buildings and equipment, utilities, food for the EOC, for our various emergency response centers and other staging areas. Parks and recreation, rentals. An example of rentals would be the shower and restroom facilities that are brought in at the emergency response centers, and roads and bridges. You'll also see or notice that the agenda before you is just over $7 million, but the costs have already been revised upwards to nearly $8 million. We don't need to worry about that disparity right now because, again, these are estimates. The clock is still running. We will continue to refine these estimates as we get information in. On a positive note, as we've shared with you, we anticipate we'll get over 85% of this reimbursed from FEMA and the state of Florida. At this point, that's over $6.5 million. Also, during individual briefings, council also asked for details regarding our contracts and who we anticipate paying for from this funding. I also have that. There you are. Of course, at the top, City of Tampa, our internal customer for preparation and staffing, the employees. Moving down to the debris removal, that's solid waste, is undertaking in conjunction with these two vendors. Not only do we have to have a vendor haul away debris, but we have to have the vendor and us monitored for tracking purposes and reimbursement going forward. There's the showers and restrooms I talked about, and again, the various vendors providing food to the various locations. What we don't know yet are the myriad of companies that we did business in using our purchasing cards in the run-up to the immediate emergency. We have purchasing cards throughout the organization to get those supplies that either it doesn't make logistical or economic sense to hold on to, or those that we find we need at the last minute. I will note these are all previously approved contracts, and no contracts were signed or increased during the emergency session. That's because, as part of our emergency management protocol, we get these council-approved contracts signed ahead of time, and we hold the funding that we may need in advance. That is our Hurricane Reserve Fund that we ask you to move money out of today. Also, just to give council some context, it's been relatively recent, but it's been a little bit, 5 years since Hurricane Irma. And you can see here a comparison of how Hurricane Irma landed and where we are today. Just about 5 years on the dot, 2-day events. It looks like Hurricane Ian will be a little more than half of the expense associated with Hurricane Irma, but I'd like you to direct your attention to the Irma reimbursement information I've provided there. You can see it took over a year to get a mere $300,000 reimbursed. And you'll see our last significant reimbursement occurred almost 3 years after the event. So it is not a quick process. And it's not a quick process because it's very complicated. There's the assessing of the damage, there's the intake of information, there's the analysis of information, there's discussion with the reimbursement agencies, and this may shock you, but often, for example, FEMA auditors will come in and won't agree with the initial actions that FEMA indicated we should take in the first place, and I'm not picking on FEMA, that's just part of the process. So it seems very likely that we will have a significant amount of cash tied up for a significant amount of time. That's another reason why we want this funding moved from the Hurricane Reserve Fund. Finally, Council, I'd like to clarify some statements and information that was shared earlier. This agenda, as you may know, including this item, was approved Friday evening in the clerk system. We briefed each of you individually, as you know, but this item was late, the agenda was late, for the reasons that we've already mentioned. Nearly the entire city working around the clock to prepare, pardon me, and deal with an emergency. And let me also share with you, this event hasn't ended, as you're seeing right here. Not only do we respond to the event during, but solid waste is out there doing event-related activities. Human resources, what you don't see. The revenue and finance shop trying to pay thousands of employees accurately in a way that we can track for reimbursement. Operationally, we are still in an emergency. And we briefed each of you, as I said, and Tuesday, a council member asked for additional information associated with this item 2 days ago. Okay. Moreover, the council member asked that this information be provided, I quote, when this is presented. That's exactly what we've done. Council, I've said it before and I'll say it again. You are my customers. It's important that I provide good service to my customers. I think with the information we've provided, the briefings we've held, and the additional information which we've provided when it was asked for, is providing excellent customer service, especially given the time frames and restrictions associated with this emergency. I hope that answers any questions you have, and I can answer additional questions.
Councilman Carlson.
I don't know who, I don't know who else asked for detailed information.
No one.
But I was, no one.
No, sir.
And is,
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking me a question.
no, it just appears that, never mind. You know, each of us is elected by the public, and we represent our constituents in the public, and I would appreciate if we would get respect from the administration. My question is, the documents that you've just shown, I asked in the question the other day. I even asked for it yesterday in an email. Yesterday, I submitted by email my concern to you and Chief of Staff that this was not disclosed to the public, because I feel like the public needs to see the information. It's not sufficient just for us to see it, and we're talking about now $8 million. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that this administration plays loose with numbers.
I disagree with that statement.
In the Hannah Avenue project, toilet to tap, and others, I won't go through all those details again, but just because you get a legal opinion saying something is okay doesn't mean it is. The fact is that we need to respect the public's need to have transparency. And you said that these documents are provided every day to the county. My first question is, why didn't you give us what was given to the county yesterday or the day before? Put a caveat on it and said this is as of Tuesday or Wednesday, but you had some version of these documents. Why wouldn't you provide it to the public for transparency purposes?
I certainly could, and we can do that going forward, but what you asked for, sir, was for this information to be provided as part of the presentation.
It's not just what I asked for, it's that we're talking about almost $8 million now, and the public deserves. I don't understand why the administration wouldn't want to be transparent about it. The mayor had a press conference about transparency and accountability. It's a basic question. It's like going back to Hannah Avenue. I asked you a couple days before, what's the rental equivalency if we had to rent space? And you decided not to do it.
That's not just true, sir. We provided that.
It's not just that I asked the question. It's that it's a basic part of policy analysis that anybody would do. Mm-hmm. My second question is, to the first point, I would just appreciate if the administration would be transparent with information like this, especially about big ticket items. With the purchasing cards, what's the limit? What's the dollar limit on it? What's the most that somebody can? I don't know what authorities are out there. Can somebody spend $1 million on a purchasing card?
I don't know, sir. I'd have to defer that to procurement, which handles the purchasing cards. But I can provide that answer to you.
And then are we just going to get a summary list of what was spent, or is somebody going to present back to us what was spent on it? And do we have any approval after the fact? Can anybody, if they have a purchasing limit, can they just spend whatever they want on the purchasing card?
No, the limits are increased, and if anybody from purchasing is here, they can come forward. But the limits are increased during emergency, and following the emergency event, they are reduced back to normal limits.
At the beginning of this, you said that we had already pre-approved some of these contracts. Are any of these expenditures going to come back before us for approval for any money to be spent?
Again, that's a two-pronged question. The first question I believe you asked was, will there be a reconciliation in accounting? My words, there absolutely will. There has to be for federal and state purposes, and historically, we've provided that to City Council. In terms of additional approvals for expenditures associated with the emergency, I don't know the particular nuances associated with that, but I can find out. Again, you have the pre-emergency, you have the declaration of the emergency, and then you have post-emergency, and the rules and restrictions and tracking needs change between those three periods.
And I have to, just for the public's sake, I have to ask these questions because by charter, we're required to oversee the budget and the and contracts. And so if we don't ask these questions, we're not doing our duty to protect the taxpayers. And we fought hard to find a few $1 million for affordable housing. We desperately need money for pothole repairs and other things. And to approve $8 million without any information until just now, but without detailed information and without being able to prove contracts is worrisome to the public because they wonder why their streets can't be repaired and they can't have sidewalks. And then you said that no new contracts were approved last week. Were any contracts canceled last week?
Now that I don't know.
Related to disaster recovery?
I don't know. I'll respond to that question when I can talk with the procurement.
Can you please send a memo to all council? If you have any answers to questions that we've asked, if you could send it to all city council. I don't know if there's a way to make it public for the public. And then the last question is, if you get 85% of it back from the federal government, what happens to that money? Do we then approve where that goes, or is that in a slush fund that somebody can spend?
It's an excellent question, and again, as I've said before, I find the term slush fund misleading, but I'll use that word if you'd like me to. And I'll give an example. Following Hurricane Irma, we actually depleted our hurricane fund, and it took us, I believe, a year or two to replenish that. So direct answer to your question, when that funding is reimbursed, we will place it back into the Hurricane Reserve Fund.
And does City Council approve putting it back in there, or how does that work?
We will come to you to approve that, yes, sir.
Okay,
it's a budget transaction.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a three-way trifecta between the federal government, the state of Florida, and the city of Tampa. I believe the item on the agenda today, 7,234,000 or something like that, of which one party is coming up with 5.2 million, which is the feds or FEMA. That's 75%, and the other 25% are divided by 12.5% from the state of Florida, or 875,000, and 12.5% from the city of Tampa for 825,000. The sum to the total then equals 7,234,000 or something to that degree.
Yes.
This is an estimate. These are guess estimates. You just mentioned that from what we got here to your agenda went up about $850,000.
Yes, sir.
And these are estimates. And the problem is when you have an emergency, you have to take action. You can either get criticized in the beginning or criticized for not doing and taking the emergency. Either way, you're going to be criticized. And when it's an emergency, these things are audited by FEMA. And you just mentioned earlier that it took how many years to get it back?
It took nearly 3 years to get it back, and as an example, the 2004 hurricanes, I believe, were closed out after 8 years. It is a lengthy process.
So it's not a lengthy thing, and you borrowed the money from the rainy day fund, if I heard you correctly. So
yes, sir,
our
our
obligation is
hurricane
either
emergency
to pass it or not to pass it, or to clean the streets or not to clean the streets, to pay what we already used, then paying overtime pay and so forth and so on, and clean up debris that you've done, the food, the trucks, the energy, or whatever it is that you're putting in there. And this is not an uncommon thing. These are common with any city or any county who's had some type of a disaster. Am I correct?
Correct.
That's all. Thank you.
If I can just add on to Councilman Miranda, you make a good point. We have incurred these expenses, whether it's payroll, contractors, or supplies. We will pay it from someplace. We are legally obligated to do that.
Any other questions for Mr. O'Hara? Councilman Carlson, hang on one second, please. Councilman Miranda, this is one of your agenda items under finance. Do you want to wait to the consent, or do you want to go ahead and pass this, make a motion?
Chairman, it's up to you, not mine. You're the chairman. I'm the chairman of the finance, so if the council wishes me to do it now, I'll do it now.
Would you mind going ahead, because I think we're going to have another comment.
Item 51 is a resolution making certain changes in the budget of the city of Tampa, and I'm going to read it for fiscal year ending September 30, 2022, providing the transfer, relocation, or appropriation of $7,034,000 in the general fund, solid waste operation fund, and FEMA reimbursement fund to provide for anticipated expenses related to Hurricane Ian, providing an effective date.
A motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Any further discussion? Councilman Carlson.
Yes, as I stated earlier, I have deep concerns about the lack of transparency. I have concerns about the attitude of staff regarding my request for transparency. In looking through the information that we just got, more than half of the money is going toward staff. I have concerns about where the rest of it would go and how it would be spent. However, staff has promised to provide some additional transparency and send us additional information. So with great hesitancy and worry, I will go ahead and vote for this because I don't want to hold up staff getting paid. But I would just appreciate in the future that staff would provide transparency without us asking, and also would be collaborative in providing transparency when we request it. Thank you.
Councilman Goods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rivera, how much is in that fund?
I'm sorry, say
How
again,
much
sir?
is in the fund now?
$7.24 million, I believe.
So basically, you're gonna clean it out, basically, what we're doing today, correct?
It depends on the timing of these expenses and how much they become. But as soon, or if council approves this item, we begin tagging that, both for expenditures and tracking. So that's a long way of saying I don't know yet.
Right, so it could be less, it could be more.
It could, yes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. O'Hara, I just need to ask a question. I think I already know the answer. One of the councilmen said that half of it was going to staff. Now, we had police and fire working 12 hours off, 12 hours on, which then went into overtime. So can we safely say that the majority of that went to overtime pay because of the emergency to our city staff?
I just do not know the answer to that question at this time. We are, again, these are estimates, and in fact, I believe we paid people today. As we're going through the information, we have to decide what was paid in service of the emergency, and then what was paid during day-to-day operations. The city just doesn't simply stop because there's an emergency. So again, that's a relatively long-winded answer of saying I don't know.
Well, I think I can safely say that it's because of overtime, because of the state of emergency, is the reason why we're having to pay staff more. We have a motion that's been made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Hurtak? Yes. Carlson?
Yes.
Goods?
Yes.
And Vieira?
Yes.
And Citro?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Mr. Baird, you look like you want to run up to that podium right now.
I'll get out of your way, buddy.
Are you going to speak to us about agenda item number 7?
Correct.
Thank
Brad
you.
Baird, Deputy Administrator of Infrastructure. Here to answer any questions on item 7, which is Palmacia Wastewater Collection System Rehabilitation Project for $3.2 million with In Situ Form Technologies. And I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Baird?
Move the resolution.
Second.
Motion to move this resolution, file number PW 22-7744-2 by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me, roll call vote.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Viera. Maniscalco. Miranda.
Yes.
Hurtak. And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Agenda item number 8.
Item number 8 is for Forest Hills wastewater collection system rehabilitation in the amount of $5.6 million with, again, with in situ form technologies, and I'll answer any questions.
Any comments or any questions? Councilman Goods.
I won't get into the deep weeds, but we had our conversation yesterday, so
Yes.
you know what my expectation is going for. We won't lay out today, but you know what I'm looking for going forward with those numbers.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Could you give us the EBO on that?
Yes, I'm very proud of that, as a matter of fact. EBO participation totals 20.9% on this one, which is, I believe, high for one of these type of projects, of which BBE participation is 4.6% and HBE is 16.3%. Associated with manhole rehabilitation and cleaning, T-being, and grouting lines. So,
Any other comments or questions? Councilman Goods.
You know, again, the EBO numbers are going up for those big classes. I just want to make sure when we don't have a level of service, like we talked about, Brad, we indicate why, because people go to question, I got this high number here, are we trying to still play number game here? So want to make sure we have it balanced, but make sure we're trying to get what we need to get for those different classes. But I do know it's good that we finally got that, because again, you said you never had that level of service for that product, that service, okay?
going forward, we will communicate when we don't achieve, levels like this, we will communicate that. Thank you.
Move the resolution.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote.
Goods,
Yes.
Viera. Maniscalco. Miranda.
Yes.
Hurtak. Carlson.
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9, file number CM 21-69408.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Kate Wells with the Legal Department. I'm here on item 9. These are proposed amendments to the public hearing notice requirements in Chapter 27. It's also been referred to, I think, originally as the neighborhood text amendment proposal, as well as the good neighbor notice proposal. On July 21st, Council made a motion directing staff to provide an update and status report on this item. Simply stated, there has been no further action subsequent to the February 24th City Council workshop. Given the passage of time, I thought it might be helpful if I can do a brief presentation with your indulgence as to what was discussed on February 24th. So thank you. I see some nodding heads, so thank you.
Yes, please proceed.
When the concept started as a privately initiated text amendment, the city understood the purpose of the proposed amendment was to provide increased awareness of public hearings. And I did file a memo, and with the memo there is attached a copy of the original proposal. But if it might be helpful, I just made this summary, which is on the overhead. So as submitted, the proposal requested changes that would require notice to be mailed to property owners at the physical and mailing address of the property owners in the event the two are different. Notice to be mailed to renters, increasing the notice area for all applications from 250 feet to 500 feet. And for applications requesting multifamily residential, commercial, or industrial uses, the notice area would be increased to a 1/4 mile, and a community meeting would be required 30 days prior to the city council hearing. They also requested that additional information, contact information, be added for the registered neighborhood organizations. And in the event there is not a registered organization for a certain project, that you then start looking at the abutting registered neighborhood organizations for notice. And lastly, include a full-size hard copy of the most recently filed PD site plan when you're looking at either a special request or rezoning to PD. When the requested, many of the requested changes deal with the notice area, I wanted to take a moment to summarize the current notice requirements in our code as well as the statutory requirements. And here's another overhead just to briefly summarize. The statutory notice requirements for rezonings and other land use decisions are set out in section 166.041 of the Florida statutes. These require an ordinance to be read on 2 separate days and notice to be published in a newspaper 10 days prior to adoption of the ordinance. So that would be 10 days prior to second reading on the application. Supplemental notice requirements are established in section 27-149 of the Land Development Code. These require mailing notice to property owners within 250 feet of the subject property, posting notice on the property at least 30 days in advance of the hearing, and then filing an affidavit with the city clerk's office confirming compliance with these notice requirements. Both the statutory and the supplemental notice requirements are intended to provide interested members of the public with information about the land development application or ordinance, to provide sufficient time to determine how the application or ordinance may or may not impact their interests, and lastly, but most importantly, to provide the opportunity to participate in the public hearing before official action is taken. Staff researched the notice requirements of other jurisdictions, and a summary of that research is attached to the memorandum filed with council. You'll find that the notice areas that we looked at range generally between 200 feet and 500 feet. Hillsborough County, recognizing that you've got an urban or an urban service area where there is more density than an more rural area. In the urban service area, the requirement is 300 feet notice, and elsewhere in the county, it's 500 feet. Staff found that while notice areas may not be consistent across local governments, they are generally consistent within the local government for the applications and don't generally differ based upon the requested use. With respect to the proposal, there has not been any discussion, and I think it's warranted if council wants to move forward with this, to discuss the basis for expanding the notice area if that is council's desire. In addition to the legal issues that we had raised previously during the workshop in February, there were practical issues that were discussed. Section 27-149 establishes the notice requirements for all types of land use decisions, not just rezoning. So it deals with certificates of appropriateness with the BLC and the ARC. It deals with review hearings before this council. It deals with variances that go to the VRB. So in the event council is interested in changing the notice requirements, I would ask that they be limited to the rezonings and the land use applications that come before you and not impact the applications that go before the other boards. But again, that's certainly subject to discussion. I want to, when this administration came into place, there was a development services advisory team that was created and looked at many issues, including the land development code. And one recommendation that came out of that team was to have predictability and uniformity in the code to the extent possible. And in December of 2020, this council approved an amendment to Chapter 27 where we had uniform notice procedures. In the event council wishes to revisit that, we'll be moving away from having that uniform approach to notice. With that is a concern, will there be an increase in misnotices? It's one thing when everybody knows, no matter what type of application, the notice area is 250 feet. Once you start changing it, there's that potential. Other concerns that were raised is with regard to including renters in the notice area. That's been a big topic of discussion. When property owners are required to be noticed, there is a list automatically generated by the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser that will identify all owners of property within that radius. That similar list, I'm not aware that it exists for renters, and that's the challenge with identifying an objective way to identify who the renters or the tenants are within the notice area. And there was one application that council saw recently, and the tenants within the rezoned area, the proposed rezoned area, expressed concern about not receiving written notice. And when I went back and looked at the application, you had certain folio numbers. So with the folio number, you can identify the owner of the property. What we don't get from the property appraiser are the tenants within that folio number and the extent to which the addresses differ from just the general physical address for the folio number. So that's just an objective concern that has been expressed. if we were to include renters or tenants as required for the notice. The original proposal requested amending the definition of aggrieved person to include property owners within the proposed expanded notice area. Carol Ann Bennett reached out to me this week and let me know that they agree after further discussion. There is agreement and support for the proposed definition that was discussed in February, and they're removing that part of the request. So, currently, aggrieved person in our code is defined to include an applicant or an owner of property within the 250-foot notice area from the subject parcel. So with what was recommended in February is that we change the definition of aggrieved person so that it aligns with the common law definition and how the courts interpret it when they look at issues of standing. And one example, and it's the definition adopted by the City of Orlando, and just to briefly share it with you, they define an aggrieved person as a person who will suffer a negative effect to a protected interest as a result of the quasi-judicial action sought by the applicant. The alleged adversely affected interest may be shared in common with other members of the community at large, but shall exceed in degree the general interests and community good shared by all persons. And it goes on to clarify that an association shall not be deemed to be an adversely affected person. So keeping in mind what the initial goal was with the proposed amendments, and that was increasing awareness of the hearings. In February, what was recommended to council is that the city keep the notice requirements as currently codified in section 27-149. We amend the definition of aggrieved person, and I'd like the idea, and I think staff likes the idea of requiring a community meeting for the rezonings that come before you, and whether that's appropriate for Euclidean rezoning, that's certainly something for council to discuss as to the extent you're interested and supportive of requiring that community meeting. Should it apply to all rezonings or just certain types of rezonings? I know I covered a lot, and it's very condensed from February, but I didn't want to do an entire presentation as we did before. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hurtak, could I see your hand raised first? Councilman Goose.
The biggest problem I see with all of this is people are visual people. And if they don't see something, they don't know something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we don't change and do what the county does. They have big signs. They have big signs.
I was
And
just
and I don't-
discussing
and I
that
don't
with
know
Carol Ann
if we need to
Bennett.
if we need to change the ordinance in reference to signs as it pertains to this particular issue, but the signs need to change so people can see. When I drive anywhere in the county, and I can go anywhere, I can go to, for example, 50th and Schley. They have a community meeting, or if they got a land use issue, you see this big old sign where the county even tell you the date, time, whatever. People stop, they look, they see what's going on. You can't see this little sign we got in the city. It's ridiculous. So I think one thing you need to add in there is maybe the signage, number one, and you talk about the notices, maybe 300 feet, okay? I can live with 300, I can live with the signage. You're never gonna be able to know who the renters are because renters are transit people. But if the notices are going to that house, regardless if it needs to go to an owner, because property owners may live in Las Vegas somewhere. They may get it, don't really care about it because they ain't there anyway. But if the notice goes to at least the property itself and the owner, at least you can say, you get junk mail all the time. Residents, current resident. Current resident could be the renter. So I think those are three options that you can use. You have the agreed statement you have that our landlord uses, I think, and you can have a fix there and see how that works. But that would be my suggestion. Change the signage. Look at the notice, with the notices with those issues, and I think you'll be all right. And go to 300. I think you'll be all right. My opinion, of course, we have counsel.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. Exactly what Councilmember Good said I was gonna say, larger signs, because as you see, I put my glasses on. I can't see what's on those white signs, especially when written in marker.
Yep.
From the car, it fades in the sun, and, there's a sign. Is it coming to council? Is it going to another board? I don't know, and I'm here. It's very hard to see, so a bigger sign, Councilman Goods is right, would be very helpful and would be, I think, more cost-effective for the applicant. I know mailing is not a fortune, but there's a lot more manpower and whatnot. But expanding that notice from 250 to 300, I think is reasonable 500 feet is what, 1/10 of a mile, give or take? But, you know, meeting not in the middle, but a more reasonable option, 300 feet, I think is helpful. But the signs right there, you know, we put out campaign signs, we want people to see it. These signs that we use, the white signs, are near impossible to see. Even squinting and pulling over, and I just know that's probably gonna be a big hearing, but, I agree with what Councilmember Good says, thank you.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and first off, thank you, Ms. Wells, for your presentation. It was always very in-depth and professional, and obviously you put a lot of hard work into that. And I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. The suggestion and only rezonings, that was a concern I had of it. That it's the way that I see this, and I agree with all the things that have been said, is this is a good government measure where we want people to know what's happening in their local government, but it's got to be done in a reasonable way that doesn't result in something being overly broad or burdensome to some individual who can't afford an attorney, et cetera, et cetera. And I think by going to rezonings that are going to occur in council, for example, we can prevent some of that. So I think that's a really good thing. So, but again, this is something that is very well intentioned, that can do a lot of good things, and I think as presented, it can have some positive effect. But I just wanted to thank you because you obviously put a lot of hard work into it. So thank you.
Councilman Carlson.
Thank you, and I'll echo that. Thanks, Ms. Wells, for the briefing today, but also the thorough briefing before the meeting. I think we need to expand the distance. I will hear what the public says. It seems to me that 300 is a reasonable addition. We want to encourage growth and development, and we have to be reasonable. But at the same time, we need to make sure that people are affected, are notified. The signs, I agree with them also that we can't read the signs, and also they're trashy looking. They sometimes end up being trash, and it's hard to know what exactly they mean and what they say. You said community meetings, and sorry if you said this, but did you say to include specifically notifying neighborhood associations?
So neighborhood associations are currently required to be notified. What was being requested through the amendment was to include additional contact information for the neighborhood association, and in the event that there's a property that's coming before you where there's not a registered neighborhood organization, to then look at the abutting neighborhood organizations. And the one concern I recall from staff is the way our registration process is. It's not set up based on the property address. It'll pull up that way, but the list of neighborhood organizations that are then required to be notified, it's based on those organizations that request to be opted in for that area. So we would want to look at how the manner in which we're capturing the organizations in our database, how that would translate to what is being requested, and to see if there's a way to adjust that.
Sorry, what about Councilmember Good's idea also about not only sending it to the owners, but the current resident? Is that possible?
I believe that the property appraiser may generate that separate list. It's just not by tenant. So we can, I'd like to look at that to see exactly what can be generated. And the reason we rely on that list, that is then the list that the post office goes by and stamps every page to ensure that. So I want to make sure that we have an objective way to create those lists. So if I can look at that, I think that's an easy addition.
And the other way of saying it is, we're not only sending it to the property owner, but to the property itself.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
And if I make just one comment, the discussion about 300 feet, if that is where council decides, I would like an opportunity to talk to staff. With that 300-foot radius, would we then be supportive of perhaps that does apply to all applications? It's not a tremendous increase. And then again, we have uniformity in our code. It was the concern initially is where we are expanding to 500 feet and then possibly a quarter mile. It was the concern of how that would impact different types of applications that don't have the same impact as a rezoning.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I believe that the signs we put up now are papered, cardboard. They're not plastic vinyl, are they?
Yes. Yeah.
Are they corrugated vinyl?
Yeah.
Well, they should stand out and last for a long time. I'm just playing the devil's advocate, thinking about, if you do this for signs, what are you gonna do? Does this mean that the sign code has to change for the city of Tampa? Because once they see these signs, they're gonna say, if the city can do it, I wanna do it.
I certainly don't want to recommend
Well, I'm just
revisiting our
asking you,
sign
you're the
code,
attorney,
but
and
the
I'm not.
the sign requirements for rezonings are set out in Chapter 27, and it's specific to notices of public hearings. So I think there's a way to distinguish it from other signs.
I wanna make sure of that.
Understood.
All right, that's what I wanna, thank you very much.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
And thank you for bringing this forward again, and I'm looking forward to what the public has to say about this as well. In addition to the signs, you and I had discussed different colors for different things. A rezoning might be green, a variance might be blue, I mean, whatever. So again, and a big City of Tampa seal, that's the one thing that when you drive by and you see our current signs, you can't tell just visually that it's the City of Tampa. And if you look at those Hillsborough County signs, that seal is the first thing you see. So I would love, I want to bring this back in, we're having a discussion about all sorts of rezoning housing type issues at the workshop at the end of this month, October 27th. And you and I had talked about when we get these ideas and we hear from the public. And I know that right now, Than is trying to have a meeting with, I believe, the Tampa Bay Business Builders Association. Is that it? Yes? No? That's, well, they'll let me know. But anyway, they're working on meetings with applicants, basically, so that they could come up with something that they could agree on. So I look forward to that. So that will be my motion at the end of this discussion, is to bring back some of these ideas and what a sign would look like. What would be the cost if we made signs bigger? Would we have to do a cost of installing the sign? I mean, what kinds of things are we looking at? So that's the kind of stuff that we could come back on the 27th with just a little more information. But so far, I appreciate everybody's comments regarding it. And definitely, I know you and I also talked about how do we deal with the tenants, but not just the tenants, but apartment complexes and the property appraiser knowing the address, but not every single apartment number in each scenario. So what could we do about that? So those are issues that I know we've talked about.
So quickly, if I may respond to that, if there is support to change the signs, then the one thing we will want to do is look at the cost and the installation, and because that's certainly not a cost that at this point our fees would cover. But if the signs are much larger and really bring attention to the request that's being made, if I may suggest that in the situation a couple of weeks ago, the tenants on the property that are being impacted by the proposed rezoning, I think that would be a really, great way to see what's happening on your property. And then, of course, there's always contact information if you need more information. But yeah, to the extent that we can identify an objective methodology to identify tenants or renters, we'll look into that. But it has to be objective to the extent that it requires someone to manually look at the notice area and generate it. That right there has the element for error, and then you have a misnotice, and we want to avoid that type of situation.
Thank you.
Is there anyone, Council?
Yes, I just do have a question, just for clarification, unless if your motion is going to be bringing it back on the 27th. You had mentioned rezonings, but council often hears other things other than rezonings, for instance, the alcoholic beverage or special uses.
Special use applications.
Or review hearings as well?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Goods.
All right, if the councilwoman is going to bring a continuance back on the 27th, I don't want to belabor it long down the road after the 27th, because people have been waiting and waiting. So I want to make sure when we come back on the 27th, if we can already have some of council's ideas already laid out. If we can come back on the 27th before that and get with council members to kind of have their plan laid out, I think that'll be good, so we don't have to help with the long-time people from the public, and then immediately come back and let's get something drawn and move down the road. This has been drawn out long enough.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shelby.
Yes, I believe what would be coming back on the 27th would fit into a certain cycle because code changes, this would be part of a code change? Or is it because it's procedurally, it could be done outside of the cycle?
I would recommend that this be included in the January cycle with any other amendments. I know we're also looking at issues with regard to review hearings at council's request, so it might be appropriate to address everything together, and it'll give staff time to work through the amendment as well as the implications on the cost of the signs and how we would address that. But I also know there are members of the public that wish to address this, and we might hear some other ideas. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public, in chambers who would like to speak to CM 21-69408, which is agenda item number 9?
Hi, my name is Carol Ann Bennett, lifelong resident of Tampa. I just want to show right here that if you notice here, you'll see that Jacksonville is 350 feet, Miami is 500 feet, Broward is 500 feet, Tallahassee is 1,000 feet. And I also want to notice that they do have some other distances for certain uses. For instance, in Broward County, if you're going to do a big box store, it's 4 miles. In Orlando, a big box is 2,000 feet. I just want to say that the original that Ms. Wells was referring to, her presentation was extremely accurate. We, through discussion with various neighborhood leaders and amongst ourselves, we have changed it to try to address a lot of the concerns that came up. And we like the staff recommendations as to the aggrieved person, and we like the staff recommendations as to the neighborhood community meetings. We withdrew ours and substituted theirs. We've also tweaked a lot of the other things based on feedback that we got about concerns. We are meeting soon with 3 different land use attorneys to discuss with them and see what we can come to agree on. We plan to meet with, again, with city staff and the legal department and try to work out some of these issues. I want to say that the renter issue, our solution to the objections was, as you all alluded to, go to the property address if and only if the property address and the mailing address are different. This doesn't happen very often. It can be done. I have a man who lives on my street who's lived there renting for 7 years. He's a part of the community. The person who owns the property, who lives in Ohio, is not, frankly. And the other renter situation that we were trying to address is only if the subject property is multifamily. Because we recognize the difficulty of doing it more than that. Half of the citizenry in this city are renters. And right now, none of them have the right to any notice about anything, not a single one. And so we can't solve the entire problem, but we feel like if the subject property, where someone's home, they've been living in this apartment complex, their kids are in school there, if their home is going to be destroyed, at least the courtesy of a notice. The bigger signs are excellent, we're all in favor of that. Right now, the county will have the big signs within the city sometimes, and I've never heard that, speaking to Mr. Miranda's concern, I will see it on the corner of Bay to Bay and Dale Mabry, so I don't think that's an issue. We love the bigger signs. And we do want to discuss with everybody, we would like bigger than 300 feet, and we would like to explain further that, if someone is asking for a variance for the shed to be 6 feet from the property line instead of 7 feet, that's a lot different than a 1,200 unit apartment complex or a big box store. And so we want to address all of that. Thank you.
Good morning. Is it still morning? My name's Stephanie Pointer, and this little PowerPoint slide you guys saw 2 years ago on my birthday. You might remember we were in the convention center and Mr. Daniels took his shirt off. Okay, so if anybody remembers that meeting. So this is my neighborhood. This is a development of 216 units. These blue spots were notified. This orange line is the only entrance to my neighborhood. Okay? We will be meeting those folks every single day when we leave my neighborhood. That was the first time I came here. I want to show you another example, and Ms. Corbett's here. This was her baby. Let's look at this for just a second. So this slide here, and I'm sorry, it's my pretty coloring, but the bottom line is the 250-foot line is right there, okay? Everybody within that line got a notification. Now, this is 205 apartments. This is a secondary street right here, okay? And if you go out to this, the city staff created a different drawing that goes out to 1,000 feet. So this isn't even 1320. I personally handed out a flyer to every single person who lived on those streets. I believe that's the time we blew up the phone lines and people couldn't call anymore, if I remember correctly. But all those other people who were impacted by this every single day had no notification. That's not fair. And those are people who are longtime homeowners. And I also want to show you for that exact same project, here's what it costs them to send it out. $12.47, $11.18. Okay, so that's $23. It roughly costs 55 cents for a stamp or 56 cents for a stamp, so double that, it costs $46. That's what that developer had to send out for notifications. Is it gonna make that big a deal? I'm sorry, you spent millions and millions of dollars building an apartment complex, and this is not gonna put a burden on them. Sorry. And we've learned that there's a lot more that could be given. The basis for notification, the reason why we want this change has nothing to do with legal standing. It really doesn't. It makes sure that the people who live there know what's going on. We've also asked for if the neighborhood association has not stood up, that they contact THAN. That was Councilwoman Hurtak's idea, and I think it's a great idea. Because just 2 days ago, we got a call about something on the agenda tonight. It's a second reading. But the thing about it is, we didn't know about it, so we can't help those folks. So, bottom line is, we're willing to take on some of that because I know that some of these people pick up the phone and they call the developer who tells them, oh, we're not gonna do anything. And that happened to me personally before I ever walked through the doors of City Council. Oh, we're not changing anything, you can't do anything about it. Well, that's a story and everybody knows it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you wait on those time, because Ms. Pointer,
Yes, sir.
can you put that drawing back up?
Councilman Goods, you're recognized.
I thought I was, sir.
The color,
I didn't recognize you, but now you are.
Thank you, sir. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for permission. Thank
the
you.
one that I colored, this one?
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
one.
Yes, sir.
So your big red schematic in the middle.
Okay.
Is that a property that is going to be developed?
It has already been developed. I think they've already gotten the CO on it.
All right. So then you said the outer
The red is
your
what they notified.
Is your 250,
Yes.
and your outer perimeter goes up. That's what 500 there.
No, that's 1,000. Because
1,000.
at some point, City Council asked for the 1,000-foot mark to be put on all of their rezonings. And that was back when Mary Santiago was still here. Because I asked her, I was like, where is this for other ones? And she said, City Council just asked.
I'm glad I saw that, because sometimes seeing a visual makes it different. That's why I said people are visual learners at times. And it's kind of if you're showing that design right there, maybe that needs to have a discussion at the workshop, because now I'm looking at a bigger picture now than what I was imagining now. It's, and it's a different schematic here with a different concept, but thank you for the drawing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This little house right here, I own it. And you should see the increase in traffic. Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Can you leave that up, Ms. Cornell?
Yep.
And this is why, I mean, the number 300 sounds good, but when you see that most of that is trees and road
Right.
and park, so even, I mean, I know that the other thing I threw out there was maybe just a number of homes, but I think that becomes confusing. So I think 500. So when staff comes back with this, if they could have a schematic for us that shows 250 versus 500 versus 1,000, just so we are able to see that? I'm sorry, Ms. Pointer, you have something?
I have one other thing that I would really like to show you. These houses are are right away. So the rest of this property, all the way to Interbay, belongs to the city of Tampa. It does not belong to our neighborhood. We are a HOA. That is right away that belongs to the city. So who are you notifying? You're notifying the right of way?
Exactly, and that was the point that map that you had earlier demonstrates the need for an expansion of the space. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council. Steve Michelini, 2407 Sunset Drive. One of the things that you have to remember is that you're affecting all of the petitions, and I know that we provided you with a demonstration and a diagram showing you the impact where the radius being increased tripled or quadrupled the cost. It's not $24. You have to add the staff time and the copies and the whatever. But you were changing, the original request was for 1,350 feet, and you're changing the cost from $200 or $300 per notice to something like $900 to $1,000 for the notice. And that didn't include time and labor for the people who have to put that together. But generally I think that 300 feet, increasing it is not a big issue. And I don't think that increasing the size of the sign is a big issue. Add $50 or whatever to the petition fee so that you pay for the additional size of the sign, but provide the metal stakes so you don't have to go and buy metal stakes separately, so that when you're getting your signs, you get the metal hangers that support those signs. I think that the Builders Association should be included. I know that Carol Ann Bennett mentioned she was meeting with 3 land use attorneys, but they did not mention the Builders Association, which I think is important. There are a number of stakeholders that are affected here, including small property owners that apply for variances and all kinds of different things, ARC and BLC, and you're putting those people into the same category as some of the larger projects. And I know that Stephanie Pointer showed you a map. Those are unique properties where you have, in the South Gandy area, where you have large tracts of land where you don't affect many people. But the rest of the city is not developed that way. It is a very intense and densely populated city. And when you increase that size, you also have to show that those people are impacted in some way. I think the state law says that if you increase the notice area, you have to show how they are impacted in one way or another. Those individuals are showing up at these hearings whether they got the notice or not. They can't claim that they didn't get notice when they show up and say they have problems with these petitions, whether they're renters or not. And it's extremely difficult to try to track renters. I think the staff has told you, the legal department has told you there's no way of identifying them. But responsible development people that come in try to make sure that if there's an adverse impact, we always respond to the phone calls. We always respond to the emails, whether we're accepting their criticism or not, but we do respond. So thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon, Council. Cammie Corbett with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700. Since that was my baby, I thought I would tell, at least with Councilman Hurtak, who was not here for that rezoning case, that property is an anomaly. It has the railroad tracks, but we met with the neighborhood before we filed that application. We actually continued that case one time to continue to meet with the community. Our association was the Port of Tampa Bay. We hadn't included the South of Gandy people. We incorporated them in. So through these applications, as there is neighborhood concern, most applicants do meet with the neighborhood, and we do make sure that people are informed. definitely support the larger signs and any efforts. I think any efforts we can do to help communication, that's great. I do have concerns about a large notice area like 1320, but I am scheduled or trying to get a meeting with Stephanie and Carol Ann, and hopefully with maybe probably Jake Kramer and Elise Batzel from Stearns Weaver as well, and have ongoing dialogue. So hopefully when it comes back, everybody's all in agreement. So thank you.
Councilman
Ms.
Goode.
Corbett,
Yes.
we've met several times. You seem to be a comparable person, you know. What would be your suggestion of comparable as it relates to the size?
The signs,
No, the size,
Size.
the distance.
the distance, I mean, I'm fine with the 300 feet. I think when you go beyond 500 feet, not with these anomaly properties, but within the urban area of the city of Tampa, smaller lots, smaller parcels, you run the risk of diluting the effectiveness of the notice. If you send too many notices to the neighborhood, they're gonna lose track of, you know, is this really in my neighborhood? Is this not in my neighborhood? I've told this story to some before. I have a friend who lives in a unit that was owned by a neighborhood association president. He says he gets so many notices, he doesn't even look at them anymore. So you do dilute the effectiveness, and that's why I think the bit larger signs, because that's when you're driving around your neighborhood, you say, oh, something's happening on that property, whereas you get a notice, the notices are, if you're not in the world, like I understand what I'm getting when I receive one of those. A lot of people don't even understand what they are. So I think the larger signs is a better alternative to expanding the notice radius area.
I probably would like staff to do a study of the area of the average areas that are being built and look and see what that would be. Be it 3, be it 5. I know on hers they have 1,000, and if 5 is the median, then let's look at what is the medium area to bring them a compromise for the builders and developers and the citizens.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Ms. Corbett.
Councilman Hurtak.
So what, again, I know that you all are going to have discussions to talk about the possibilities of this, but would your recommendation include, say, 300 feet for a regular property, but to Mr. McElhaney's point as well, when you have these larger, more anomalies, that's when something maybe larger could go into effect, maybe 500 feet.
I think that's difficult to tell, and I think it would be, you get into parsing whether, you know, any number you pick is arbitrary. So if you say it's 2 acres, it's 2 acres. If it's 3 acres, why did you decide? I think it's better to just have the uniformity.
Okay.
And then also, again, focus on the larger signs so people in the neighborhood do know what's going on, because we definitely do support that.
Okay, thank you. And for staff, another thing that Ms. Corbett brought up that is very relevant, because as a former neighborhood leader who used to get these, they aren't very clear. I don't know if there's any way we can change the language to better explain what is actually occurring in layperson's terms. I know that legally we're required to have a certain definition, but if there's a way that we might be able to look at a notice that a layperson might understand, and it looks like Ms. Travis might be coming up to see if that's.
Yeah, no, we will bring this, when we come back to you in January, that's something that we could look at. What does a notice look like? Can we highlight something higher in the top? There's the legal requirements that we have to make sure is included in the notice, but we could take a look at it. Sometimes when people see the same thing over and over, so maybe just changing up the look, the color, something may help. But one thing to remember is we also have an interactive map that people can go to the site. If you go put in your address, you can see what applications are around your property. So we're going to start communicating that tool a lot more so that our citizens know how to engage and be a part of the process.
Well, also then that, you know, maybe when we're thinking about the letter, being able to include that at the bottom of it, something like that. So I definitely see this as being part of, retooling this, and I really appreciate that. I think that will be perfect for the January
Yeah, these
discussion.
kinds of conversations are very helpful. You know, sometimes when you're doing this work for a long period of time, you know, it's just mundane. But when you have engaged citizens that are bringing things to awareness, it's time to look at a refresh and make sure the legal requirements are there, but how can we improve? So
yeah, I think that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Mr. Shelby.
Yes, just a clarification, if I can. The form of the notice is not really set out in the code, but you said, I thought I heard you say, unless it is, did you say you're going to be bringing it for the January? Or
Any
for-
improvements that we've made that are not dictated by code, I would still let I'll still let the council know what that look and change would be. So no, council doesn't have, it's not dictated in code what it looks like, but being responsive to what the citizens are saying, and so that they understand, and so that this council understand what changes we've made, we're gonna bring that back. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, Council. Kevin Reale, 401 East Jackson Street. I'm not going to repeat what some people have said before, but I would just suggest to Council that in considering this, I think that the notice to the neighborhood associations will have a much larger effect than debating the size of this boundary for all the reasons that are stated before. For example, I'm here for 2 items today. One is affecting a relatively large multifamily development. This change in notice would have almost no impact on that because of its location. And I'm also here for an adaptive reuse for a very small project near an urban area where that change in notice would probably quadruple the notice requirement. So, those are going to be circumstantial, but with a consistent notification to the neighborhood associations, you're notifying the right people and they're notified consistently, and that I think will have more of an impact than going very, very broad with the notice mailings. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak to this? Councilwoman Hurtak.
Then I would like to make a motion. I'm not sure of the date that we would come back in January. Do we have a date for that?
Oh, I thought you were going to add something to the 27th. I'm sorry. Did you say something in the October workshop?
Well, yes, you might not have been here. They asked for January.
If it could be included in the January amendment cycle,
Yes.
and you'll see it, we don't have a date certain at this point, but
Okay.
January 15th is the cutoff for all amendments that would be included in that cycle, and you would see it with everything else.
So- He's not saying January 2nd, he's saying second. He's seconding.
Oh, I thought you said January.
No, so I don't know what date.
We don't have a date at this point, it's just
Okay.
the deadline for the cycle is January 15th, and that'll
Okay.
dictate then the schedule coming before council. But your motion could be to include these amendments for discussion in the January 2023 cycle.
Then I'm going to take the words out of her mouth.
Thank you.
And a motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilwoman Maniscalco. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
We are recessed till 1:30.
Good to see you, Andy. Take care of yourself, okay?